Xiang Beifei's tone was extremely calm, yet for some reason, each word carried a chilling threat. It might have been an illusion, but for a moment, she felt that Xiang Beifei was not joking at all. He had the ability to confront her, but how could that be possible? He was still just a student in the later stages of qi controlling, so how could a few words from him influence her? And Xiyu found herself more and more unable to see through this boy, even losing her usual composure somewhat. After a long while, and Xiyu finally regained her senses and asked, "Can I ask you a question?" "What?" "After you graduate, will you work for the Alliance? Like your senior brother, like Mr. Yi?" Speaking on behalf of Professor Luo. "We'll see." After saying this, Xiang Beifei turned and walked away. He wasn't thinking about relying on power to protect his own people. What he needed most was to improve his cultivation. He needed to quickly elevate his cultivation. That way, he could access more people's system interfaces. Then, if anyone dared to cross him, he would directly shear their wool. Those who crossed his line would have their wool completely shorn. It didn't matter to him whether it was the governor of a Jizhou region or the commander-in-chief of the Alliance. As long as his cultivation was high enough, disabling a person's system would be no difficulty for him. The system world regime inherently had its flaws. Within the Alliance, positions were assigned purely on system levels. As long as you were SR or SSR, you almost certainly got the preferential treatment you wanted, without needing to consider whether the person was actually capable of handling the position. It's like how an SSR-level literary Taoist, who had never dealt with a desolate beast, could become the head of the martial arts college. So even if Xiang Beifei held a high position in the Alliance, it wouldn't actually change much, especially since he was still at N level. It was not easy to have significant influence where higher-level awakeners gathered. The Alliance was full of a mixed lot. The 9 schools frantically sent their students there, meaning the waters were very deep, with cross-cutting influences from all spheres. It was virtually impossible to change those people's minds by normal means. The challenge was formidable. The only solution was power. Just like Elder Luo told him the first time they met. If normal methods failed, rely on your fists. Beat them until they acknowledged your authority. University life continued. Every day was fulfilling for Xiang Beifei. Studying, cultivating, training, the fighting arena, he was always diligent, his life progressing in an orderly fashion. For him, his moments of rest came during his daily routine of following idle fellow Elder Luo to count ducks and watch the clouds. However, going to Elder Luo could hardly be called resting, as he spent most of his time cultivating spiritual power. Yet, with Elder Luo, even cultivation felt effortless and pressure-free. Since Elder Luo was a carefree individual, he had no particular demands for Xiang Beifei. Things just went as they should. With Elder Luo, Xiang Beifei always found different perspectives. Sometimes, listening to Elder Luo sing felt like a treat, albeit a terrifying one. Singing ability. 9,999. This old man's singing talent deliberately had been improved so that even his casual warbles resonated beautifully, capable of echoing through one's mind, bewildering and intoxicating. Xiang Beifei did not underestimate this ability. It was a potent spiritual attack. One could easily get trapped in an immersive state by Elder Luo's singing, unable to extricate oneself. In battle, if Elder Luo sang a few lines, opponents weaker in willpower would stand stupefied, enraptured, essentially leaving themselves open to attack. So every time Xiang Beifei went to hear Elder Luo sing, his primary goal was to use his spiritual power to resist the impact of the singing and thus strengthen his own spiritual abilities. But Elder Luo was too powerful. Unless Xiang Beifei used his abilities to manipulate Elder Luo's leisure system, countering Elder Luo was difficult. Hence he often ended up confused. With the river flowing eastward, the stars in the sky align with the Big Dipper. As Elder Luo sang, the whole melody's essence seemed to blend into reality. Focusing on just one lyric could create an indistinguishable illusion. In Xiang Beifei's eyes, he was thrown into a tumultuous river, with raging waves continuously battering him. Floating and sinking in the river, he saw a huge wave about to swallow him up as he struggled desperately, hardly able to breathe. Xiang Beifei desperately used his spiritual power to resist and barely managed to form a pathetic piece of wood in the towering waves. He clung to it tightly but could not withstand the terrible waves, as he was overturned at the first sight and left drifting. Just as he was about to reach the shore, another wave struck, sweeping him away, leaving him choking on several mouthfuls of water. Once Elder Luo had finished singing, Xiang Beifei was drenched in sweat. Soon, he realized it wasn't just sweat. He was actually soaked with water. Somehow, he had fallen into the lake. Then Xiang Beifei finally regained his senses, realizing he wasn't in the raging yellow river but merely in the school's man-made lake. Everything had been just an illusion, and he had almost confused it with reality. "Quick! Praise me for my good singing." Elder Luo stretched out his hand and scooped up the disheveled Xiang Beifei from the lake, laughing merrily. "Good singing, my foot." Xiang Beifei wrung out his soaking wet clothes and wiped his hair, pulling water weeds off his hair. His spiritual power was still too weak to resist Elder Luo's invasive singing. "Ha ha ha! I just love to see you in such a mess." Elder Luo was extremely pleased. Every time, Xiang Beifei always brought him many surprises and accidents, and such a talent always amazed him. However, since Xiang Beifei was still only in the later stages of qi controlling, his cultivation wasn't high, which is why he struggled during spiritual power training. Seeing the genius youngster falter made Elder Luo very happy. It was probably very rare for him, finally being able to get one over on the young lad. So, he let loose with his voice, singing so vigorously that Xiang Beifei was engulfed by his song, unable to extricate himself. However, he sang within limits, merely leading Xiang Beifei into a dangerous illusion, but not drowning him completely, allowing him to find a way to escape in this fantasy. Otherwise, if Xiang Beifei was to drown in the spiritual power-condensed illusion, he would die in reality as well. Elder Luo definitely couldn't afford to lose Xiang Beifei. After all, he was his little white crane. So, while singing, he always paid attention to the pitch, keeping the danger within a range that Xiang Beifei could withstand. In fact, Xiang Beifei had Xiaohe, and it was hard for Elder Luo to affect him through the system because Xiang Beifei helped Elder Luo with tasks every day, and the points were all in Elder Luo's system, enabling him to control Elder Luo's system if he wished. However, after much consideration, he still didn't let Xiaohe help because he knew that if he had to venture into the external desolate realms and face those powerful spirit-type desolate beasts, he must learn spiritual power. Xiaohe could only fend off the system's capabilities, but the abilities of the desolate beasts were uncontrollable, or rather, at least Xiaohe didn't know if it could control those desolate beasts, so Xiang Beifei didn't let Xiaohe intervene. He needed to enhance this capability just in case. Anyway, Elder Luo wasn't going to drown him. Getting tricked was a part of it, but through this process, Xiang Beifei's spiritual power still improved remarkably. "I feel like I could climb onto the shore next time." Xiang Beifei ignited his spiritual power and then evaporated the moisture from his body. "Alright then, once you climb ashore, I'll switch to another song for you. Let me think. Next time I'll sing Unease, to let you experience what it means to be really anxious." "Ha ha ha." Elder Luo laughed loudly. Xiang Beifei. Alright then. As long as it strengthened his spiritual power, he was even okay with listening to Two Tigers. "By the way, can you tell me what the Meridian opening stage is like?" Xiang Beifei asked as he grabbed a handful of sunflower seeds and sat down. He now needed to think about the next stage of his cultivation. Currently, his cultivation had already reached the peak of the later qi-controlling stages. It seemed he was just a whisker away from reaching the Meridian opening stage. "Sure. Let me think. Meridian opening is about expanding the meridians in the body, taking the body's spiritual power load to a higher level," Elder Luo said, in an excellent mood, beginning to explain what exactly meridian opening entailed. This world is filled with spiritual energy. Condensing the spiritual energy and directing it into the body can create spiritual power in every corner of the body and control this energy. To achieve this is to master qi controlling. However, the body's capacity has its limits. When spiritual energy enters the body and cultivation reaches the late stages of qi controlling, unable to transform more external spiritual energy into spiritual power, It signals that the body must expand its capacity. At this time, it was necessary to create a qi-containing meridian within the body. The existence of meridians allowed the cultivator's spiritual power to be more abundant, thereby enabling the deployment of stronger abilities. Typically, these qi-containing meridians are tethered along the physical blood vessels, meaning the concept of meridian opening is to establish an additional qi-containing meridian outside every blood vessel, used for storing spiritual power. The opening of qi-containing meridians is not a simple matter. Many people slow down in their cultivation progress after stepping into the meridian opening phase. Why? Because the creation of these meridians is profoundly challenging. They need to attach along the exterior of the human body's blood vessels, specifically for deploying spiritual power, so naturally, their length is about the same as the blood vessels. Elder Luo explained leisurely. Xiang Beifei suddenly realized. He vaguely recalled that the total length of human blood vessels was about 96,000 kilometers. To forge meridians of such length would indeed demand a terrifying amount of time and energy. It was no wonder that Lu Hong had been stuck in the early stages of meridian opening for over a decade and had only broken through to the later stage this year, while Principal Li Nanqing, at 70 or 80 years old, had spent his lifetime just reaching the later stages of meridian opening. Lu Hong's predicament was due to a past injury. Perhaps his meridians had been blocked, needing powerful spiritual power for recovery. A kind of medicine like the advancement pills were for such purpose. Principal Li Nanqing must have fully developed all his body's meridians, but to step into the God-refining realm, he needed even stronger spiritual power as aid, and the God-refining pills belonged to such auxiliary substances. You don't need to rush now. You've just recently entered the late stages of qi controlling. There's still plenty of time. Hastening could prevent achievement, Elder Luo said, pausing suddenly. Eyeing Xiang Beifei strangely, he asked, "Wait a minute. Haven't you reached the meridian opening phase yet?" "Oh, not yet," Xiang Beifei responded. "That's good. That's good. Then I shouldn't be contradicted by your progress." Elder Luo sighed in relief, lightly patting his chest, appearing slightly more composed. Every time he explained to Xiang Beifei how long cultivation techniques tend to take, Xiang Beifei would always jump in, proving through his actions that, well, Elder Luo's theories were fit for nowhere. This made Elder Luo feel quite embarrassed, so now he dared not speak with too much certainty. Regaining his composure, he said, "All right, don't worry about it. You've merely reached the late stages of qi controlling recently. You should first consolidate your current realm. I've seen too many students. Based on my experience, analyzing your current cultivation situation, it should maybe take 4 or 5 months. No. 3 or 4 months. 2 months. Yes, 2 months. You might reach the meridian opening phase in 2 months." Elder Luo earnestly calculated with his fingers, arriving at the boldest prediction. Xiang Beifei had reached the late stages of qi controlling around the end of August, and now it was only the beginning of November. Not much time had passed. Normally, SSR ranks progress very quickly in the lower realms, potentially reaching late qi controlling by early August. For instance, Ho Chenggu, the last time they met, his cultivation level was higher than Xiang Beifei's. Xiang Beifei and Ho Chenggu awakened their systems around the same time, but Xiang Beifei took an extra month to enter the late qi controlling compared to the SSR Ho Chenggu. Elder Luo now considered Xiang Beifei's talent to be a level above SR but slightly below SSR. Based on the data from his school's previous SSR class, SSR awakeners from late qi controlling to meridian opening, it would still take about 3 or 4 months, likely being around early December to reach meridian opening. In the qi controlling realm, each minor realm ascended quickly, but between qi controlling and meridian opening, there was a significant chasm. Many elite colleges' S ranks can reach late qi controlling within a year but may take 3 or 4 years to reach meridian opening. SSR ranks, being more powerful, would cultivate extremely fast without needing 3 or 4 years, only 3 or 4 months, likely reaching meridian opening by December. Since Xiang Beifei was a month slower than SSR ranks in reaching late qi controlling, normally, he would also be a month slower in reaching meridian opening, which would mean late December would be a likely time. Continue your journey on Empire. Elder Luo counted on his fingers again, reaffirmed his calculations, then adjusted his system settings to mental arithmetic. 99.99 to recalculate. Yes, having calculated so meticulously, he couldn't possibly be wrong again. He boldly wagered it would take 2 months. It was indeed strange. When Elder Luo had led everyone to fight against the beast tide, it seemed he hadn't been so serious about calculations. But at Beifei's place, these simple calculations still needed to be checked several times. When you cultivate, you must be steady and avoid being overly eager to achieve success. Understand? The meridian opening stage is a very important phase. Many people get stuck at this level because they are too anxious and fail to clearly understand their own condition. Elder Luo admonished. Understood. Xiang Beifei nodded slightly and asked, "Where is the best place to start opening the meridians?" Start from where you are strongest. You are used to using your fists, so it's best to start with both fists, then move to the arms and eventually spread to the whole body, Elder Luo suggested. Fists. Xiang Beifei looked at his right fist, pondering. How do I open the meridians? By absorbing the external spiritual energy to nurture your own meridians, allowing them to grow gradually. This is when the system's advantage becomes apparent. The higher the system's talent level, the greater the help it provides, the faster it absorbs external spiritual energy, and the quicker the meridians open, Elder Luo explained. The reason the system's talent in this world is so crucial is exactly as described. Especially at higher realms, the disparity between SSR and S-level will grow even wider, and even among SSRs, various gaps will emerge. Of course, higher cultivation realms are a different story altogether. Elder Luo further detailed the methods and key points of how to open the meridians to Xiang Beifei, patiently guiding him on how to use spiritual power to coalesce into meridians, even demonstrating it for him. I think your own system will also tell you the key points, but if you need anything, feel free to come to me. Before leaving, Elder Luo gave Xiang Beifei a big handful of sunflower seeds. After leaving the grove, Xiang Beifei returned to his dormitory and entered his cultivation space. Following Elder Luo's advice, he planned to start the meridian opening from his fists. Elder Luo thought that Beifei's system would tell him how to cultivate, but in reality, Xiang Beifei had no system at all. He only had Xiaohe. Xiaohe wouldn't instruct him on how to cultivate. All he had was a unique cultivation technique. However, he remembered the last time Xiaohe had snatched the God-refining pill from Principal Li Nanqing and said in dog language, "Xiaohe, can the spiritual power crystal help me break through faster?" Xiaohe had mentioned that Principal Li Nanqing's God-refining pill could rapidly advance him to the mid-stage of meridian opening in a short time, and even unlock new abilities, meaning the system's rewards could potentially help him. Find your next read on Empire. Woof, 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 Xiaohe said. Oh, so it's possible. What Xiaohe meant was that high-grade spiritual power crystals were effective for him, while the low-grade ones were basically useless and could only be used as a supplement. During his chi-controlling stage, Xiang Beifei didn't rely on someone else's system rewards to increase his cultivation level. His advancement was mainly through step-by-step cultivation of his own technique, a truly grounded approach to cultivation. Because laying a solid foundation in the chi-controlling stage is crucial, similar to building a layer of a building. If the foundation is not solid, the building will easily collapse once it gets higher. This is also why, at higher cultivation realms, even though everyone might be SSR or SR, the differences in cultivation levels are vast. Many just used the system to stack their cultivation levels, which created different foundations. The reason why Xiang Beifei spent longer in the later phase of chi controlling than Ho Chenggu was precisely because of this. Previously, the system rewards he took from others were used to illuminate constellations. But as of now, his foundation was already very solid, so he could attempt to use other spiritual power crystals to aid himself. The spiritual power crystals from the chi-controlling stage were no longer beneficial to his advancement. What he needed now were crystals from the meridian opening or even higher stages, like the crystals from the God-refining stage. Similar to Principal's God-refining pill reward, this is going to be tricky, Beifei muttered while cracking the sunflower seeds Elder Luo had given him, reflecting on the incident with Principal Li Nanqing. Principal Li Nanqing's God-refining pill contained immense and pure spiritual power. Xiaohe mentioned it could refine this pill and transform it into pure spiritual power for him to absorb, enabling him to reach mid-stage meridian opening within half a year. He had returned it at that time, however. Now, he had encountered 3 high-level figures, each more formidable than Principal Li Nanxing, with at least God-refining stage cultivation. But Xiang Beifei had never considered asking them to spend on his behalf. That's because the higher the grade of spiritual power crystalline needed, the more system points it costs. Just thinking about how Principal Li Nanxing had saved his entire life for that single God-refining pill shows how significant it is. Moreover, that pill was only from the quasi-spirit stage. Even though Elder Luo, Yi Changfeng, and Professor Guo have high cultivation levels, acquiring such items is still very costly. Elder Luo rarely uses his system points to purchase items from the store because his strength is linked to his system points. At most, he buys some sunflower seeds for himself and Beifei to enjoy together. Xiang Beifei couldn't ask Elder Luo to exchange a system reward similar to a god-refining pill. It would cost Elder Luo nearly 10 million system points. If he deducted 10 million system points, Elder Luo's strength and overall attributes would effectively decrease by 10 million points, significantly reducing his strength. Now Elder Luo treasured Xiang Beifei as if he were a treasure. Although Luo might agree if Beifei asked, because Beifei's spiritual power cultivation could provide significant benefits to him, Beifei did not want Luo to suffer too much loss because of him. That's 10 million in strength, not something to joke about. He still needs to cling to someone's coattails. The thicker the better. Professor Guo and Yi Changfeng might also be willing to invest such an item in Xiang Beifei, as their systems had identified his potential and the rewards received were roughly equivalent to the investment. However, for now, Xiang Beifei couldn't let any of the 3 of them incur losses. Actually, even without their help, Xiang Beifei could reach the meridian opening stage just through his own cultivation. It was merely a matter of time. If it were the system rewards from Yuqishin, Xiang Beifei could take them with peace of mind. Regrettably, he still didn't know what exactly Yuqishin's system entailed. Then I can only use this. Xiang Beifei already had a spiritual power crystal suitable for the meridian opening stage, which was the 1,000 Faces/Moon from Lai Wuying. This was a spiritual power crystal of the early meridian opening stage, originally intended for lighting up constellations when he reached that stage, but he decided to use it first to help open his energy channels. With Xiaohei's assistance, the 1,000 Faces/Moon turned into pure spiritual power, soon condensing into an absorbable spiritual power crystal. Xiang Beifei immediately used this mass of spiritual power to develop his energy channels. As he absorbed the spiritual power crystal, he was also refining it, striving to coalesce the energy channels. The process was very slow. He cultivated for a full 2 days. During these 2 days, he even took leave and didn't attend classes. Xiang Beifei's fists were covered with extremely majestic and abundant spiritual power. He was refining this power into energy channels, his spirit extremely focused. Compress the spiritual power into one point and merge it into one's body. Xiang Beifei operated the cultivation method within his body, and the spiritual power in his fists was already taking shape. It felt as if something extra had appeared within his body, and his spiritual power instantly increased a level. And on his fingers, he had finally coalesced a small segment of the energy channel, less than an inch long, extremely meager, equivalent to about 3 centimeters. But after he had developed this single channel in his right fist, the force he could exert with his right hand was significantly stronger than his left. Do not underestimate an inch of energy channels. In his perception, the force he could exert with his right hand was probably about 5 times stronger than his left. Most peculiarly, simply developing this small segment of the energy channel seemed to rejuvenate him completely. His perception, sense of smell, hearing, all seemed to become incredibly sharp. Is this the meridian opening stage? Xiang Beifei found it quite strange. Although it was just an inch of energy channel developed, the overall enhancement went far beyond just this inch. Now for the left hand. Xiang Beifei was not satisfied and shifted his focus to his left hand. With the experience from his right hand, the left hand was much easier. However, at this time, he realized that the speed of development had slowed down because the spiritual power crystal was depleted, the absorption of the surrounding spiritual energy couldn't keep up with his consumption, and the spiritual power within his body couldn't be supplied quickly enough. This is bad. I might fail at the last step. Xiang Beifei found that if he continued developing his left hand, his spiritual power would be exhausted. Reluctant to give up just yet, as he was about to abandon the attempt, Xiaohe barked loudly, pulling out a handful of sunflower seeds from Xiang Beifei's pocket and stuffing them into his mouth after cracking them open. The seeds quickly transformed into pure spiritual power, flowing within Xiang Beifei's body, replenishing his depleted spiritual power. I almost forgot about this. Elder Luo's seeds possessed unparalleled spiritual power, a very strange recovery item. Usually, he just ate seeds whenever he had nothing to do, and he hadn't paid much attention to the benefits they could bring him. But at a critical moment like this, the effect of the seeds was particularly obvious. Spiritual power surged rapidly in Xiang Beifei's body, gathering once again as he desperately pressed on toward his left hand. The blood vessels in his hand condensing the spiritual power, attempting to pull the energy channels together. Xiaohe furiously cracked open the seed shells, and Xiang Beifei kept eating the seeds while cultivating. After spending 10 hours in the cultivation space, finally, he also managed to coalesce the energy channel in his left hand. Thank goodness Elder Luo stuffed a handful of seeds into my pocket last time. Xiang Beifei clenched his fists, feeling the power that they brought him, thoroughly comfortable. He continued to nurture the energy channels in both hands, spending another day. Everything is difficult at the beginning, so the next step is to slowly temper this Qi meridian with spiritual energy, letting it grow until it spreads throughout the body. Soon, Xiang Beifei had finished all of Elder Luo's melon seeds. He stopped and discovered that the Qi meridian had spread to his fingers. Because the blood vessels were twisty, it didn't completely cover his palm. He couldn't measure exactly how long it was now, but it was definitely more than 1 inch. Maybe it added up to half a meter? Elder Luo's melon seeds are really something. Xiang Beifei decided to ask for more melon seeds. These melon seeds were the same ones Elder Luo had given him 5 days ago, when he explained to him about Qi meridians. Now all were eaten. Cultivating really does consume a lot of melon seeds. However, before that, Xiang Beifei had to first make sure that he had indeed reached the meridian opening stage. His situation was different from other cultivators. Other cultivators had systems, relying on the systems to pile up cultivation levels, and the systems would display the realms very clearly. But Xiang Beifei did not have system notifications, nor any earth-shattering signs. He could only rely on his own perception. However, the verification method was quite simple. If he was in the meridian opening stage, it meant that he could see the system interface of the God refining stage. Xiang Beifei immediately left the cultivation tiles of the dormitory and rushed to find Yi Changfeng. He didn't go to Elder Luo for verification because Elder Luo's cultivation level displayed in the system was utterly abnormal. Who knew if Elder Luo's cultivation was just at the early stage of Qi controlling now? So the best person to confirm this with was Yi Changfeng. Approaching Yi Changfeng's office, Xiang Beifei immediately caught sight of Yi Changfeng standing at the door of his office. Host. Yi Changfeng. SR rank, supremacy of 10,000 swords system. Realm. God refining mid-stage. He could see it. Xiang Beifei felt a sigh of relief in his heart. He browsed through Yi Changfeng's system and found it to be as he had imagined. Each of Yi Changfeng's swords had an ability. Up to now, he was able to control 569 swords, which means he had 569 abilities. So strong. Xiang Beifei never underestimated Yi Changfeng, but Yi Changfeng's strength was obviously even stronger than he had imagined. The 10,000 sword system, if he could bring out its potential to the fullest, would mean controlling tens of thousands of abilities. The way Yi Changfeng's system became stronger was by comprehending sword qi or practicing the sword. This sword wasn't limited to himself. Even watching others practice or anything related to swords could make him stronger. You played a Xianxia game and chose swordsman. Used your sword to kill 10 little monsters. Sword qi value +2. You read a sword cultivator novel. Sword qi value +10. Continue your journey on Empire. In the outer domain wilderness, you drew your sword and killed a ghost head bee. Sword qi value +50. Sun Yushan learned your sword techniques. Sword chi value plus 10. Xiang Beifei learned your sword techniques. Sword chi value plus 300. Xiang Beifei perceived sword intent. Sword chi value plus 500. You discovered Xiang Beifei is more suitable for practicing Heavenly Sword 9 traces than you. Sword chi value plus 1000. Always dealing with swords and not getting tired of it. Xiang Beifei murmured to himself. But now he could see the mission released by Yi Changfeng. He was right. Yi Changfeng's Heavenly Sword 9 traces also needed his improvement. He pondered that he should learn Heavenly Sword 9 traces as well. After all, sword flight was very cool, and it could also make him run faster. At that time, Yi Changfeng was frowning, apparently pondering something, and Xiang Beifei quickly realized that Yi Changfeng wasn't alone. There was another person in the office. Astonishingly, it was Yu Qishun. Yu Qishun still had the sullen look of deep and bitter hatred plastered on his face, as if he was talking to Yi Changfeng about something. However, he seemed to be mocking Yi Changfeng. Xiang Beifei stopped his steps at a distant pillar, not getting too close, unable to hear what the two were discussing. But that didn't matter, as what he cared about was Yu Qishun's system. He had always wanted to trap Yu Qishun. At the beginning of school, this guy had set a trap for him, throwing him into the extraterritorial wasteland without any preparation. That grudge had not yet been settled. Previously, he was unable to see Yu Qishun's system interface, so he couldn't confirm whether he was involved in Yu Qishun's system tasks. Now was a good opportunity. Host. Yu Qishun. SR Grade Purgatory System. Realm. God Refining. Mid-Stage. SR Grade Purgatory System. Create various purgatory spaces. Emerge from purgatory to sublimate. Die in purgatory to become a fierce ghost. The difficulty of these purgatory spaces varies and is divided into 10 levels. It appears that Yu Qishun has only unlocked the challenges of 6 levels so far. He can directly throw people into purgatory or toss desolate beasts in. If they can't survive, they become part of purgatory. Sure enough, it's a sinister system. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but frown. These spatial systems were all very eerie. He had already encountered one, Zhu Xinjue, who took pleasure in killing couples as the highway killer with a very twisted mind. It wouldn't be the same with Yu Qishun, would it? But as Xiang Beifei browsed Yu Qishun's system log, he found that Yu Qi's system log seldom mentioned throwing people into his purgatory. Most of those thrown into purgatory were desolate beasts. Tossing a desolate beast into purgatory was basically a death sentence, turning them into purgatory wild beasts under his control. However, there was a limit to the number of purgatory wild beasts at each level. It couldn't accommodate too many. Moreover, if the desolate beasts were too powerful and broke through purgatory, their strength would surge. So he couldn't pick too powerful desolate beasts for purgatory, or it would backfire. He's not completely twisted, Xiang Beifei thought to himself. Although Yu Qishun had a strangely sinister system, and using it to throw people into purgatory space to let them die therein was the most direct way for him to grow stronger, Yu Qishun didn't take pleasure in killing like Zhu Xinjue did. He might be a bit obnoxious, but it seemed that he didn't enjoy killing that much. Presumably, if a student really died, it would also bring him great trouble. As a university professor, he certainly wouldn't be as foolish as Zhu Xinjue. At most, he might just enjoy torturing people. Or perhaps, he had a one-sided grudge against Xiang Beifei. Yu Qishun's purgatory system had several other abilities. Purgatory Purification. Ignores any illusion technique. Blade of the 7 Sins. Has the ability to see through sins and use 7 matching daggers to absolutely suppress them. The 7 sins refer to lust, pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, and gluttony. If anyone exhibits one of these 7 sins to a certain threshold level, then his daggers, when facing the opponent, will suppress at least 1/7 of the opponent's strength. The threshold is the critical value, and Yu Qishun's system determines the threshold to be 100. If the opponent's 7 sins all reach the threshold, then they're practically done for. This ability is so strong. Xiang Beifei was quite surprised when he saw the Blade of the 7 Sins ability. In fact, Many people inherently have these 7 sinful flaws to some extent, like pride, envy, greed, etc. So if one of them reaches the threshold, it means they'll be suppressed in front of Yuqishin. Xiang Beifei continued to browse through Yuqishin's system evaluations, and he quickly found some familiar people mentioned regarding their dormitory 404. Evaluation for Long Guoqing, pride value, 350, envy value, 120, wrath value, 101, sloth value, 11, greed value, 14, gluttony value, 10, lust value, 50. Evaluation for Mengyue Kai, pride value, 96, envy value, 85, wrath value, 10, sloth value, 17, greed value, 103, gluttony value, 11, lust value, 55. Evaluation for Li Zimu, pride value, 20, envy value, 12, wrath value, 11, sloth value, 22, greed value, 10, gluttony value, 80, lust value, 46. Evaluation for Xiang Beifei, pride value, envy value, wrath value, sloth value, greed value, gluttony value, lust value. Yuqishin's Blade of the 7 Sins had evaluated all 4 dormitory 404 members. Long Guoqing was a very proud person. With 3 indices exceeding 100, that meant that when facing Yuqishin, he would directly lose 3/7 of his strength. Long Guoqing couldn't beat Yuqishin to begin with, and losing 3/7 of his strength made things even worse. Of course, even if Long Guoqing was at the same god-refining mid-stage as Yuqishin, he likely couldn't beat Yuqishin either. Mengyue Kai, on the other hand, had only greed reaching the threshold. None of the others did, so he would only lose 1/7 of his strength facing Yuqishin. Li Zimu was a quiet scholar, rather gentle and easy to get along with. Although his love for food scored higher, none of his values surpassed the threshold, so he wouldn't get reduced when facing Yuqishin. As for Xiang Beifei, it was more straightforward. No values were provided at all, with reduction judgments simply marked with many question marks. Xiaohei protected him tightly. Any system's scrutiny of him was invalid. Yuqishin couldn't see through Xiang Beifei and couldn't wield Blade of the 7 Sins against him. Those bunches of question marks were like blatantly mocking Yuqishin. This way, Yuqishin probably despises Xiang Beifei more than everyone else does. In the world of the system, it's quite normal to have the ability to prevent prying. Even the video footage of Xiang Beifei killing the triangular thunderkite could be forcibly kept confidential by the school, so it's not strange that Xiang Beifei's values couldn't be assessed. As a university professor, Yuqishin definitely knows more about the system than everyone else and wouldn't doubt this point. At most, he might have guessed that Xiang Beifei has some special protective ability. Thus, in Yuqishin's view, there was only one person who could provide Xiang Beifei with this kind of protective ability. Xiang Tianxing. Perhaps he thinks I have my dad's protective power, and that brings up his unpleasant memories? Hate the house because of the crow? Xiang Beifei pondered. But I'm such a good, honest kid. Harmless to humans and animals, all right? In the system logs that Xiang Beifei could see, about 80% of people judged by Yuqishin had some sort of crime exceeding the threshold. That is to say, in his eyes, most students are guilty. No wonder he dislikes students so much. Xiang Beifei recalled a phrase he once saw in a tree hollow. Yuqishin hates 3 kinds of people: those with higher talent than him, those with the same talent as him, and those with less talent than him. Students at Liangzhou University believe that Yuqishin hates all students, but the truth might be that he can see the faults in the students, and hence he has opinions about many of them. You should give him a hint, Xiang Beifei told Xiaohei. Woof, woof, woof. Xiaohei lazily wagged its tail. Oh, you can't see, can you? Xiang Beifei nodded slightly. Last time Yuqishin was 2 realms higher than him. He couldn't see the system information of the other party. Xiaohei couldn't determine which aspects Yuqishin was prying into, so he simply blocked all. Xiaohei suddenly thought of something, blinked his eyes, and grinned very happily. Woof woof woof. Ah? That wouldn't be good, would it? Xiang Beifei, upon hearing Xiaohei's suggestion, could hardly suppress a chuckle. Xiaohei meant that it could now see the other party's system interface, which meant that Xiaohei could disguise Xiang Beifei's aura, causing the other party to misjudge. That means the next time Yu Qixin sees Xiang Beifei, Xiaohei could pretend to make Xiang Beifei's protective abilities fail, and then disguise all of Xiang Beifei's indicators. This would make Yu Qixin's system display Judgment of Xiang Beifei, Pride Value, 99, Envy Value, 99, Wrath Value, 99, Sloth Value, 99, Greed Value, 99, Gluttony Value, 99, Lust Value, 99. Yu Qixin's Blade of the Seven Sins would only affect a person if their values reached 100. If each of Xiang Beifei's values was only 99, just lacking 1 point, it wouldn't give him a chance, which would definitely cause Yu Qixin to hold his breath in frustration, infuriating him to the point of vomiting blood. Xiang Beifei could even imagine what Yu Qixin's expression would look like when he saw him. Ha ha ha, you see, I was right to name you Xiaohei. You're so scheming, Xiang Beifei said as he rubbed the snowy white head of Xiaohei and laughed. Xiaohei held its head high, shook off its white fur, and laughed loudly. But jokes aside, Xiang Beifei couldn't really do it. Not now, it would be too deliberate then. Yu Qixin would surely suspect something. Let's wait until my cultivation surpasses his. Then we can do it and infuriate him to death. Xiang Beifei still had a sense of measure. Changing all values to 99 would obviously look abnormal, as if he was deliberately teasing Yu Qixin. Although Yu Qixin is very annoying, he's not stupid. He's an SR-level university professor, and would definitely suspect that Xiang Beifei knows about his system, hence adjusting the values. Then the ability would be exposed. To scheme, we should at least wait until Xiang Beifei had self-protection capabilities, preferably in the late stages of God refining and ideally possessing the power to forcefully prevent Yu Qixin from revealing secrets. For instance, using an UR-level item to forcibly ensure his secrecy, making him aware of it but unable to speak out. By then, if Yu Qixin couldn't defeat Xiang Beifei and wanted to use the Blade of the Seven Sins to weaken Xiang Beifei's combat power, but Xiang Beifei countered the judgment threshold of the Blade of the Seven Sins, Yu Qixin could only watch the 7 numbers of 99 and glare in rage. That would definitely drive him mad with helplessness. Xiang Beifei was seriously sizing up Yu Qixin's system, wanting to thoroughly understand this person to effectively set him up in the future. According to the system's mechanism, Yu Qixin set high difficulty standards for his students, which could provide him with purgatory value. Sun Rue passed your academic assessment. Difficulty for him, 4. Purgatory value plus 400. Soon he found another entry. Xiang Beifei passed your extramural wilderness assessment. Difficulty for him, 6. Purgatory value plus 600. Good grief. This is it. Yu Qixin's purgatory value was not about enhancing his strength by plundering others' capabilities, but by setting assessment difficulties for others. The determination of difficulty level wasn't fixed but related to the person being assessed. For instance, if Yu Qixin threw a chi-controlling phase Xiang Beifei, who knew nothing about the extramural wilderness, into it, then the difficulty reached 6. Whereas, if he threw a prepared Sun Rue into the extramural wilderness, the difficulty might be assessed only as 3 or 4. In Yu Qixin's task log, there weren't many instances with a difficulty level above 5. Out of many students, only Xiang Beifei reached 6, subsequently adding 600 purgatory value to him. I passed the assessment and even added 600 for you, and you still weren't happy that day? Xiang Beifei muttered. Speaking of which, Yu Qixin was also strange. Logically, the more students who passed his assessments, the more system values he should accumulate, but why was Yu Qixin the teacher with the highest failure rate? By letting so many students fail, wasn't he actually losing a lot of purgatory value? Normally, shouldn't he just get it over with, lower the difficulty and let the students pass quickly? However, Xiang Beifei soon noticed a hint. If the assessment difficulty is below 3, it will not increase purgatory value. This made Xiang Beifei fully understand how Yu Qixin's system worked and why he set such high demands for his students' assessments. Xiang Beifei was contemplating how to take advantage of Yu Qixin. 2 months had already passed, and going for Yuchi Shen's rewards now would definitely not arouse suspicion. He was browsing through Yuchi Shen's system reward methods. Current purgatory value, 48,981,683. Reaching 50 million purgatory value grants a divine spirit pill, which can quickly advance one's divine spirit to the late god refining stage. In the current phase, for every 50,000 increase in purgatory value, additional reward, Purgatory Armor X1. Note, Purgatory Armor can ignore any attack of the same realm for 10 seconds, withstand one attack in the late god refining stage, and is invincible for 10 minutes against those below mid-god refining stage. Goodness! What a treasure! When Xiang Beifei saw this system reward, his eyes lit up. That's it. Xiaohei. Snatch it for me, Xiang Beifei said. Since Yuchi Shen was himself in the mid-god refining stage, he was practically invincible against those less powerful without needing this purgatory armor. The main purpose of the purgatory armor for Yuchi Shen was that it allowed him to ignore attacks from opponents of the same realm for 10 seconds and to block an attack from someone one realm higher. The purgatory armor was just a part of the recent extra task rewards. According to the system log, this extra task reward started 4 months ago, and he had obtained 3 pieces of purgatory armor in total. On average, he could get 1 piece a month. The 4th purgatory armor might come in a few more days. Xiang Beifei's 600 purgatory points were added about 3 months ago, which means the first purgatory armor was unrelated to him, but the system values of the next 2 pieces of purgatory armor were closely related to him. Xiaohei. He has already claimed the reward. Can it still be taken? Woof woof woof. As long as Yuchi Shen hasn't used it, even if it's been claimed, it can still be taken. But the first piece of purgatory armor was in early August, just a few days before the entrance assessment of Liangzhou University, and when Yuchi Shen claimed it at that time, the system had already checked its value, which had nothing to do with Xiang Beifei, so Xiaohei couldn't get the first piece of purgatory armor, but could take the latter 2. Only the latter 2 pieces can be taken? Xiang Beifei pondered. Yuchi Shen was an SR-level university professor, much smarter than most people. If something went missing, he would certainly think about what went wrong. The second piece of purgatory armor was taken in mid-September, and the third piece in October, and these dates were displayed in the system. If these 2 pieces were both taken, Yuchi Shen would definitely wonder why only these 2 disappeared, leaving exactly 1 behind. Yuchi Shen's system had never encountered such a situation before, so it would be strange if this sudden incident wasn't difficult to investigate. Then he might notice that the time when these 2 pieces of purgatory armor were claimed was right after Xiang Beifei entered the university. In Xiang Beifei's view, the likelihood of Yuchi Shen suspecting him was small, since Yuchi Shen would never think that a person who had only reached the late chi controlling stage had the strength to act against someone in the mid-god refining stage. Even UR-level awakeners, if they only had the chi controlling stage of cultivation, could do nothing to an S-level meridian opening stage, not to mention the restraint from the system. There was still a gap in cultivation levels. Having a higher system level only means that the awakeners cultivate faster, not that an awakener at the chi controlling stage could ground someone in the meridian opening stage and rub them into the dirt. It's impossible. Not everyone is Xiang Beifei, but just in case, Xiang Beifei decided to only take 1 piece, to reduce the chance of arousing Yuchi Shen's suspicion. Just take the 3rd piece. Don't take the 2nd, Xiang Beifei said. If Yuchi Shen had only been at the meridian opening stage, he could have taken them freely, but with Yuchi Shen at the god refining stage, he had to be more cautious. After all, Yuchi Shen still has that divine spirit pill worth 50 million system points. Currently, Yuchi Shen has nearly 49 million system points. He's roughly 1 million short. Once Yuchi Shen gathers the full 50 million, that's when to consider his divine spirit pill. Before then, he would take the purgatory armor first. It's only fair since Yuchi Shen made life difficult for him back then. Woof woof woof. Xiaohei indicated no problem. Xiang Beifei didn't linger and immediately left the teaching building. Collecting packages should, of course, happen far from Yuchi Shen. He quickly ran over and sat on the grass of the sports field, an area with many people, where he intended to be just another idle sunbather. System rewards? He had no idea what that was. Xiaohei woofed a laugh, wagging his tail, and with a flash of light, a piece of purgatory armor appeared in its little bubble. At the door of Yi Chongfeng's office, Yi Chongfeng was having a conversation with Yu Qishun, whose expression was somewhat mocking, whereas Yi Chongfeng did not look too pleased. Yi Chongfeng, if Liangzhou University ends up last this year, then your precious student, Xiang Beifei, will have to take responsibility, Yu Qishun said with a strange laugh. Yi Chongfeng furrowed his brows and spoke up. Take responsibility for what? What does this have to do with Xiang Beifei? Whether or not it has anything to do with him is not for you to decide. You may think it's unrelated to him, but the higher-ups at the school may not necessarily see it that way. You know this better than anyone. When he was admitted, many people had their reservations. Is that not common knowledge? Yu Qishun looked at Xiang Beifei with a smirk that was not quite a smile. But Yi Chongfeng spoke calmly and firmly. He got in through legitimate channels. Did you forget the details of the entrance assessment? I thought you remembered it more vividly than I do. Upon hearing entrance assessment, Yu Qishun's complexion darkened, and the smile disappeared from his face. Yi Chongfeng's words were sharp and unabashed. For Yu Qishun, it wasn't a pleasant memory, even though Xiang Beifei later brought him 600 system points, which didn't make him much happier. That's because Elder Luo had beaten him up. But Yu Qishun snickered again, saying, even if he got in through proper channels, what of it? Those managing Liangzhou University care about the university's reputation, not an N-level student. Xiang Beifei's arrival has caused quite a mess. You do understand this, right? I've said it has nothing to do with him. Yi Chongfeng replied with a deep voice. Suit yourself. I'm just kindly reminding you to be clear about how to handle this matter. If you can't satisfy those at the school, hey, you should know what kind of person Dean Wei Tong of the Martial Arts College is, Yu Qishun said with a strange laugh. So you've decided to side with them? Yi Chongfeng asked indifferently. The fact is the fact. It's unrelated to which side I'm on. Take care of yourself, Yu Qishun said. Yu Qishun then turned and left in a leisurely manner. Yi Chongfeng leaned against the door frame, watching Yu Qishun's smug, retreating figure, chin in hand, lost in thought. After leaving Yi Chongfeng's office, Yu Qishun moseyed downstairs. Something crossed his mind, and he smirked disdainfully. Soon, he returned to his own office, sat down in his chair, poured himself a cup of tea, and casually glanced at his system interface. But then he suddenly realized something was amiss. Following that, Yu Qishun shot up from his seat. The purgatory armor, why are there only 2 pieces left? No, he had gotten 3 pieces of purgatory armor. Where is my purgatory armor? Yu Qishun's face changed color. Host has already used it. Current purgatory armor count 2. The system provided the reminder in an excessively warm tone. Impossible. When have I ever used it? Yu Qishun looked very shocked. Host has already used it. Current purgatory armor count 2. The system provided the reminder in an excessively warm tone. Damn it! What went wrong? Yu Qishun clenched his fist. He had definitely not used any. And yet, something from his own system just disappeared without a trace? Was there an error in the system? Assessing the system. Assessment complete. No errors found. How could this be? Yu Qishun immediately rechecked where the error with the appearance of the purgatory armor might be, flipped through the system log, and found that his memory seemed accurate. The reward had vanished inexplicably. There was only one possibility. Someone had intercepted it. Who? Who has the power to forcibly take away my SR grade system reward? Yu Qishun was a university teacher and knew more about the system's features than anyone else. When were the remaining 2 purgatory armors obtained? Help me calculate the time, said Yu Qishun. The first purgatory armor, obtained on August 1st. The second purgatory armor, September 6th. The third purgatory armor, October 11th. Today, the host has used the purgatory armor received on October 11th. He used the most recently acquired purgatory armor today. Is it the SSR or UR-grade monsters in the Alliance? Did they tamper with my memory? Yu Qishun, holding a position in the school's academic affairs office, often dealt with high-level awakeners within the Alliance. This month, he had encountered SSR members of the Alliance no less than 5 times, a few of whom had even stronger cultivations than him. If someone with higher cultivation and a more powerful system had used some ability on him and then made him forcibly forget giving away the purgatory armor, it wasn't impossible. Detestable. To dare meddle with me. Unforgivable. Yuchi-shin clenched his fist, looking extremely angry. Xiang Beifei weighed the purgatory armor in his hands. Not bad. It's a pity that the spiritual power crystal contained within the purgatory armor could only be considered mid-level meridian opening, because it was just an additional reward brought about by the 50,000 system points and not the main task's reward. The main task's reward was that divine spirit pill. That was truly an item of the god refining phase. The power of system items depended on the user's cultivation level, so for Yuchi-shin, this purgatory armor could allow him to ignore attacks for 10 seconds at the mid-level of God Refining and be invincible for 10 minutes below that phase. But for Xiang Beifei, it would only work during the meridian opening phase. However, that was also quite good. To be invincible for 10 minutes during the meridian opening phase, what was there to fear with such an item? Xiang Beifei suddenly felt that Yuchi-shin's strength should not be underestimated. Because when he fought others of the same realm with the purgatory armor, he could ignore any attack of the same realm for 10 seconds and also had the Blade of the Seven Sins as support. Once someone was judged guilty, it would be difficult for anyone of the same realm to defeat him. Even at the later stages of God Refining, he might not necessarily lose. Yuchi-shin's Seven Sins Absolute Blade was extremely powerful, especially since this blade could also be used against desolate beasts. Desolate beasts could also be judged to have the 7 sins. So now, should I fuse it or keep it? That was the question. After considering his options, Xiang Beifei decided to keep it for now, just in case. If he wanted to light up a constellation and obtain new abilities, he could consider hunting for beast pills from beasts at the meridian opening stage. He didn't necessarily have to use the purgatory armor. Xiang Beifei tossed the purgatory armor back into Xiaohei's bubble. At this moment, his phone rang. Picking it up, he saw that it was Yi Changfeng calling. Hello? Beifei? You're not cultivating, are you? Yi Changfeng's voice sounded very serious. No, I'm sunbathing on the playground lawn. What's up? There's some trouble. Yi Changfeng's voice abruptly appeared behind Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei then realized that Yi Changfeng hadn't even hung up the phone and had found him in an instant. Having the ability to teleport through space sure is nice. From making a phone call to finding him on the playground, it took Yi Changfeng almost only 5 seconds. What's wrong? Xiang Beifei turned around and asked. Yi Changfeng hung up the phone and then said, This is a bit troublesome. Let's go and consult with Elder Luo. Come on. He grabbed Xiang Beifei's arm, took a step, merged into space, and directly took Xiang Beifei to the small woods by the lake at Liangzhou University. Can I teleport like you? Xiang Beifei was quite envious of this ability. That's one of my swords. Teleporting consumes a lot of spiritual power. Don't try it without being at the God refining level. Yi Changfeng walked deeper into the woods. But the deeper they went, the more it seemed that the woods ahead were no longer woods, but had unknowingly turned into a vast grassland. Soar freely in your heart. Elder Luo was leisurely lying on a deck chair in the grassland, humming a tune that inadvertently drew Xiang Beifei in as he listened. Damn! Not again! Xiang Beifei quickly concentrated, blocking out the song. He thought Principal Chao Pei's speech at the opening ceremony was quite influential, but compared to SSR Awakener Chao Pei and Elder Luo, Chao Pei's speech was just child's play. Elder Luo, stop singing, or the carp in the lake are going to have a breakdown, Yi Changfeng shouted, covering his ears. He was all too familiar with Elder Luo. He had covered his ears as soon as he came in, probably having been tricked many times before, knowing to act immediately. What's the matter? I'm in the middle of singing. Elder Luo stopped humming, and the vast grassland around them gradually faded, turning back into the woods. Yi Changfeng approached and said with a stern face, You truly have no idea what's going on, right? What's up? Elder Luo asked, legs crossed. Xiang Beifei spotted sunflower seeds on the table and quickly ran over to grab a handful. This was good stuff. It was thanks to Elder Luo's sunflower seeds that he had been able to break through to the meridian opening stage. Yi Changfeng seriously moved a chair over and sat down, saying, "You're aware of the freshman competition among the 9 elite schools in December each year, right?" "Oh right, isn't that next month?" "It's only November now," Elder Luo inquired. "But the roster must be confirmed now. Then training will follow. I just attended a teachers' meeting, and Principal Chao is very dissatisfied with this year's situation, especially pointing the finger at Xiang Beifei."
Yi Changfeng ape-lined.
Me? Xiang Beifei was sitting beside Elder Luo, cracking sunflower seeds, suddenly brought up, and a bit puzzled. "Yes, you." Yi Changfeng looked at Xiang Beifei and said, "The 9 elite schools hold an inter-school freshman exchange competition every year, claiming it's a contest, but it's really just to see which school's freshmen are more outstanding. Tell me, who do you think usually gets sent to participate in such exchanges?" Xiang Beifei thought for a moment and said, "Those with high cultivation levels?" "Exactly," Yi Changfeng said gravely. "Each school selects 5 freshmen based on the scale of pioneers. These 5 need to participate in a series of contests. The higher their cultivation level, the greater the chance of winning. Think about it, what kind of new students have the highest cultivation levels?" Xiang Beifei seemed to get it. SSR Awakeners. A pioneer team generally requires 5 people, so for the freshman competition, 5 will suffice. Having an SSR in the team greatly increases the likelihood of victory. Correct? Any SSR Awakener can generally enter the meridian opening stage within half a year starting from their awakening, which means they're likely close to reaching it now, if they haven't already. Meanwhile, SR-level Awakeners in half a year can at most reach the late stages of Qi controlling. Yi Changfeng sighed helplessly and continued, "However, you probably all know this year's situation. Our school doesn't have any SSRs. There were originally 2 SSR freshmen supposed to come to Liangzhou University, but because of the university's decision to accept N-level new students, recruitment teachers from other schools had the chance to slander Liangzhou University, luring away those 2 SSR freshmen. This led to a very serious situation. In the freshman competition, only Liangzhou University lacks students at the meridian opening stage. In the 9 elite schools, this year only Liangzhou University does not have an SSR. If we directly send 5 students in the late Qi controlling stage to compete, I'm afraid we'd be at the bottom. Our school has never been at the very top in these freshman exchange competitions, but we have never been at the very bottom either. Last year, we at least got 4th place. Among the 9 elite universities, ranking 4th isn't too terrible. But this year, Yi Changfeng shook his head slightly. The top 3 are considered high-level, ranking 4th is above average, not too far from the top, but in previous years, Liangzhou University always had SSR freshmen leading the team. In every freshman exchange competition, the performance of the 9 elite schools actually relies on SSR freshmen to carry the event. These SSRs are key to achieving good rankings. Therefore, the schools with more SSRs mean more meridian opening stage competitors in the contest, increasing the chances of victory. But without SSRs, relying solely on a few SRs in the late Qi controlling stage is far from enough. This is also why every year the senior leaders of Liangzhou University go to great lengths to recruit SSRs. For the administrators, the school's reputation and visibility are very important because nurturing so many students also requires the support of resources from the alliance. High-quality students can give the school's leadership more say in the negotiations at the Jiuzhou Alliance meetings. After all, Yi Changfeng served as an academic advisor at the Jiuzhou Alliance for a year and is very familiar with the system of the alliance. Xiang Beifei has already understood this point clearly. Although he has not yet truly come into contact with the Jiuzhou Alliance, he can basically guess its management system. You must not underestimate SSRs, as SSRs coming out of our school generally go to work directly for the Jiuzhou Alliance, holding key positions in various departments of the alliance. In this way, it's as if the 9 universities are jointly manipulating the power distribution of the Jiuzhou Alliance. When faced with major events, the more SSR alumni a school has, the more benefits the school gets, explained Yi Changfeng patiently. However, Elder Luo snorted lightly on the side and said, a talent selection approach that only looks at high natural gifts and ignores capability will eventually doom the entire alliance. As long as one has a high talent, they can hold important positions without considering whether the person actually has the capacity to perform the duties. Even big mistakes are overlooked. Unworthy of one's position is the most taboo thing. Many SSR and SR awakeners are key targets of the Alliance's cultivation, but not all awakened systems of SSRs and SRs are positive and uplifting. Many awakener systems even rely on harming others to improve themselves. For example, Ho Chengguo, who awakened the SSR-level Shadow Saint system, could actually improve his cultivation by binding the shadows of desolate beasts to aid himself. But binding desolate beasts is too troublesome, so Ho Chengguo just went directly to binding the people around him. Ho Chengguo's cultivation was entirely provided by others. He didn't need to cultivate himself and just waited for the shadow servants he had bound to contribute their cultivation to him. If such a person were to climb to a high-level position, the consequences would be extremely terrifying. Because if he controlled the power, he could bind the shadows of more talented individuals, binding whoever he wanted. Ho Chengguo awakened such a system, and he could have selectively bound his targets, such as specifically binding desolate beasts or those who cause a negative impact on the Alliance, using his ability well. But he didn't do this. As a proud SSR, upon awakening this system, he naturally came to believe that all lower-level awakeners were born to serve him, a high-level SSR. Those at lower levels were his servants, and it was only natural for them to contribute their cultivation to him. Even Xiang Beifei, whom he met for the first time and had no grudge against, was targeted by Ho Chengguo to rob him of his cultivation simply because the system identified Beifei's potential as very high. Of course, that he kicked an iron plate is another matter. The system of the Juzhou Alliance is just like that. It doesn't review whether the systems of SRs and SSRs are good or bad. It only looks at whether the other party is an SR or an SSR, whether their cultivation is high enough, and whether their potential is substantial. In the eyes of the Juzhou Alliance, the higher one's strength and talent, the more appealing they become. After all, many lower-level awakeners naturally feel a sense of awe towards higher-level awakeners. Moreover, as high-level awakeners can quickly improve their cultivation, the Alliance believes that these SRs and SSRs can be useful in fighting the desolate beasts and protecting all civilians. They never consider that a portion of awakeners who rely solely on high talent to hold important positions can pose risks to ordinary people that are even greater than the threat of the desolate beasts. Therefore, in Elder Luo's eyes, some arrogant SSRs and SRs with an inflated sense of their abilities are the parasites within Juzhou. People who select and employ others based only on their system rather than virtue. A lot of talented individuals with lower-level systems are unable to truly play their role and are forcibly marginalized. Just look at our own Beifei. How much worse can he be than those SRs? Elder Luo tapped Xiang Beifei, who was cracking sunflower seeds, and grumbled. Xiang Beifei shrugged his shoulders, unconcerned. One reason Elder Luo is so opposed to the Alliance's system is precisely this. If he wanted to, with his cultivation, he could easily become a senior figure in the Juzhou Alliance. As long as he operated according to the Alliance's rules, he would definitely secure a position. But Elder Luo couldn't stand this kind of atmosphere. He disliked doing things against his conscience and preferred to retire and be a leisurely fisherman rather than going there to be aggrieved. And Professor Gua has dedicated his life to defending Juzhou's frontier, unwilling to be promoted, only wishing to stay on the front lines, yet still has to be ordered around by ignorant SSRs. Yi Changfeng heard Elder Luo's grumbling and could only respond with helplessness. Elder Luo, I know you are resolute in your actions, but not everyone can be like you, recklessly killing SSRs. Did I make a mistake in killing him? Elder Luo asked. You didn't make a mistake. He was arrogant, didn't follow orders, failed to defend the fortress, allowing the tide of desolate beasts to invade and kill so many people. He deserved to die. But you should also know that there are many things beyond our control. The Alliance is not just us, there are also many conservatives, Yi Changfeng said. Even though Elder Luo's strength was formidable, rivaling that of SSRs, no matter how strong he was personally, He couldn't stand alone against everyone in the alliance. Yi Changfeng always had to consider many aspects in his actions. His reason for becoming an academic advisor to the alliance last year was actually to gain some say there. As an SR Awakener with strong abilities, he held a certain status within the alliance. Even if Yi Changfeng was powerless to change the status quo in the future, at least he could protect his own people. Elder Luo was too straightforward, and as his disciple, Yi Changfeng knew he needed to look after the old man. Many people in the alliance had grievances against Elder Luo, so at critical times, he would have to unsheath his sword and control the situation. In any case, let's not talk about the situation with the alliance for now, but if Liangzhou University ends up last this year, I'm afraid everyone will point their fingers at you, Elder, Yi Changfeng said helplessly. What does it have to do with me? Did I prevent those two SSRs from coming to our school, or what? Let me put it another way, the high-level leaders at Liangzhou University will be targeting Xiang Beifei, Yi Changfeng said. Elder Luo's eyes widened with anger. Who dares to touch a hair on my little white crane? I'll smack them dead. Xiang Beifei sat nearby, cracking sunflower seeds, his eyes brimming with tears as he looked at Elder Luo. Felt great being protected by a powerful mentor. Yi Changfeng rubbed his temples with a headache. He knew Elder Luo was fearless in both heaven and earth, and would beat up anyone from the alliance who caused him trouble, let alone people like Chao Pei who had no combat ability. So Elder Luo really wouldn't care about these petty matters. After thinking it over, Yi Changfeng said, Let me put it another way. Ren Zhonghai of Qingzhou University, he will have an excuse to ridicule you right to your face again. Damn it! Elder Luo slapped his thigh and turned to Xiang Beifei. Now we're really in trouble. We can't let him get his way. Ren Zhonghai was the Qingzhou University recruitment teacher, who came with Ho Chenggu to ridicule Elder Luo that day. He had almost forgotten about that guy. Yi Changfeng couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. Ren Zhonghai may not be able to defeat Elder Luo, but his students have beaten Liangzhou University students for several consecutive years, and then Ren Zhonghai would taunt Elder Luo with veiled mockery. This was no longer a matter of a strength gap between Elder Luo and Ren Zhonghai, but a reflection of their respective teaching abilities. Elder Luo was straightforward, but he wasn't unreasonable. If students from his own university were defeated, that was a fact. Even if he were to beat up Ren Zhonghai, it wouldn't change that fact. For Elder Luo, he didn't care about the challenges from Zhuzhou, and he would blatantly disregard the face of Liangzhou University's leaders, fight anyone who came to fight. But what he valued most was nurturing excellent successors. Because excellent successors are the future of Zhuzhou. He wouldn't care about the systemic talents of the younger generation, only their potential and character, and he would dedicate himself to nurturing those he favored. However, if the disciples he taught with this philosophy couldn't overpower those high-system students and prove that his disciples were superior, it would indirectly confirm that the alliance's system-centric approach was correct. So when Yi Changfeng mentioned this point, Elder Luo had no choice but to care. Beifei, you must maintain a calm mindset. It's okay that we are currently of lower cultivation than those SSRs, but you must have confidence in yourself. Soon enough, we'll surely catch up, Elder Luo said earnestly. No matter how powerful he was, there would come a time when he would grow old, and the future belonged to the young. If his successors were not self-reliant, he himself would feel uneasy no matter how strong he was. Therefore, every time Ren Zhonghai taunted him, he could only curse in anger and clench his teeth, without any way to counter. Now with Xiang Beifei, whether it was temperament, character, or potential, Elder Luo saw eye to eye with him. As for systemic talent, when he first met Xiang Beifei, he didn't care that Beifei was only an N-level awakener and still taught him. In Elder Luo's eyes, Xiang Beifei was a benchmark for the contemporary youth, and he placed great hopes in him. Oh, okay. Xiang Beifei nodded. He probably understood what Elder Luo meant and then asked, What are the specific rules of the competition? The competition involves 9 elite universities, each sending 5 students, totaling 45 students. The competition is divided into group and individual. The group competition is like a pioneer team going directly to the desolate wasteland outside the realm to deal with desolate beasts. Yi Changfeng explained. To the desolate wasteland outside the realm? Xiang Beifei was somewhat surprised. I thought the group competition would just be a brawl between each other. Because at school, it was quite common for various clubs to brawl. Only now no one had yet come looking for trouble with their Leisure Clouds and Wild Cranes Club. A 5-person pioneer team brawling is pointless. Pioneers are meant to deal with desolate beasts, so naturally, the method of competition should also be considered from the perspective of pioneers. Yi Changfeng paused briefly, then continued to explain. According to the competition model of previous years, it's about setting up an area, then sending the 45 people from the 9 schools into this area to hunt specific desolate beasts, usually those in the meridian opening phase, which are very powerful, and then collect beast pills. The quantity required hasn't been determined yet. It depends on this year's specific regulations. I understand. Xiang Beifei nodded, then asked, what about the individual competition? That's the problem I'm worried about. In the individual competition, each university will face off like we have to compete against Qingzhou University first, and then Yenzhou University and so on one by one. Each school sends one student for a fight that will decide the victory, and the winner scores points. That means during the individual competition, we have to fight 8 matches, Xiang Beifei said. Yes, with only 5 people, we have to fight 8 matches, meaning some will have to compete more than once. Xiang Beifei then asked, then the strengths are completely unbalanced. If someone in the meridian opening phase meets someone in the qi controlling phase, isn't that just pure domination? Such a one-on-one competition seems meaningless. That's why there will be a chance to choose the opponent. That is, when 2 schools face off, they first roll dice, and the winning side gets to decide whether the contest will be in the meridian opening phase or the qi controlling phase. Yi Changfeng said, using dice to decide the right to choose maximized the fairness of the competition, as everyone had students in both the meridian opening and qi controlling phases, and could decide what kind of competition they wanted to hold. Yi Changfeng said, but here's the problem. This year, Liangzhou University has no students in the meridian opening phase. So if we roll the dice, we won't have the right to choose, and the opponents will definitely choose the meridian opening phase. Without any students in that phase, we'll have to send someone from the later stages of qi controlling, almost guaranteeing our defeat. For instance, after Qingzhou University faces off against Liangzhou University and Qingzhou University wins the right to choose, they would opt for a meridian opening phase contest, and Liangzhou University, not having meridian opening students, still has to send a qi controlling student to compete. This way, Liangzhou University essentially has no chance of winning. What's more, the other schools all know that Liangzhou University doesn't have SSRs. When they face Liangzhou University, as long as they win the dice roll for choosing, they would definitely choose a meridian opening contest. Liangzhou University's only chance of winning against other schools lies in winning the dice roll themselves and then choosing a qi controlling contest. Yet, they still might not be able to win against the opponent, making their situation very passive. It's a pity that Xiang Beifei broke through to the later stages of qi controlling just 2 months ago. How could he reach the meridian opening phase in just 1 month? Sigh. Elder Luo was somewhat regretful. Currently, Xiang Beifei was the strongest freshman they had. Although Xiang Beifei's talent was outstanding, even with his talent, he couldn't be powerful enough to contend with SSR freshmen in the elite freshman competition in December. Just a few days ago, he had boldly bet that Xiang Beifei could reach the meridian opening phase in 2 months, which was already a very bold prediction. But the problem was, it still required 2 months. Xiang Beifei spit out some melon seed shells, thought for a bit, and then said, actually, about that cultivation issue. Never mind, if they choose the meridian opening contest, I need to see what I can use to protect you. If you go up against an SSR, you'll be at a great disadvantage. Elder Luo began browsing his system store, his gaze sweeping over some items for meridian opening spiritual defense, contemplating what could protect Xiang Beifei in the later stages of qi controlling. Do I have to participate? Xiang Beifei felt odd, as it seemed no one had asked for his opinion. Right now, you are the strongest student in the qi controlling phase among our new students at Liangzhou University. You can even pin down SRs and scrape them on the ground. You're definitely assured to win against other schools' SRs. We don't have any SSRs in the meridian opening phase, so if you don't participate, who will? Yi Changfeng didn't give Xiang Beifei a chance to refuse, deciding from the start that Xiang Beifei would participate and not accepting any objections. Xiang Beifei smirked. However, he was also quite curious to see this competition since he had almost seen everyone's system at Liangzhou University, and it might be time to meet the talents from other universities. Yi Changfeng was also browsing his own system interface. Then he asked Elder Luo, if Xiang Beifei faces an SSR in the Meridian opening phase, what kind of items could be used to protect him? I can provide some. Meridian opening and later Qi controlling stages are incomparable. All types are needed, Elder Luo said solemnly. Yi Changfeng's system store only had all sorts of peculiar swords. He didn't have fancy pills and talismans, just swords. I can only provide a few swords with special abilities for him, though these swords would be virtually useless if it's for the power of Qi controlling since he's already invincible in Qi controlling. He can't manifest these in the Meridian opening phase due to his limited strength. Wait, it's not worth the trouble, Xiang Beifei quickly said. Even the system items for the Meridian opening phase required a lot of system points, such as Elder Luo seemingly considering the lowest level of Qi protecting armor, just one of which would cost 40,000 leisure values. Using 40,000 leisure values would decrease Elder Luo's combat power by 40,000. Elder Luo might not care, but Xiang Beifei felt it was a waste on his behalf. It's troublesome. If only we had another half a year, I think you definitely have the ability to reach the Meridian opening phase within 6 months. Now it's troublesome, and this year will probably be ridiculed by Renjiang Hai and his people again. Whenever Elder Luo thought about this, it angered him. His philosophy was never able to be better validated, and he wanted to prove that the only system theory was wrong, but yet he couldn't find the right person to do so. Yeah. Setting the elite university freshman competition for half a year after enrollment is really unfair to students like Xiang Beifei. Yi Changfeng also sighed heavily. Elder Luo and Yi Changfeng were both quite unwilling to accept it. Xiang Beifei said, have you guys not considered that I might have reached the Meridian opening stage already? I did hope so. But you just broke through to the later stage of Qi controlling 2 months ago, Elder Luo said helplessly, shaking his head. Xiang Beifei pondered for a moment, then focused on the sunflower seed shells in Elder Luo's hands, his spiritual power swiftly spreading over them. What are you doing? Elder Luo noticed that Xiang Beifei was using spiritual power on his sunflower seeds, a level of spiritual power that naturally couldn't escape Elder Luo's notice. Xiang Beifei didn't say a word, just kept staring at the sunflower seed shells. And then, whoosh, a flame suddenly erupted from the sunflower seed shells in Elder Luo's hand. You rascal, looking for trouble, huh? Elder Luo flicked the burning sunflower seed shell and then said, huh? You've made some progress recently. This flame. He was in the middle of speaking when he suddenly paused, as if he had discovered something, and abruptly looked up, staring at Xiang Beifei. This spiritual power. Don't tell me. Elder Luo didn't even bother to throw away the flaming sunflower seed shell, letting it burn in the palm of his hand. Yi Changfeng, on the side, glanced unintentionally at the sunflower seed shell in Elder Luo's hand, then seemed to realize something, his eyes gradually widening. You've reached the Meridian opening stage? Elder Luo exclaimed. Ah, yes, I just broke through this morning, Xiang Beifei said shyly. He actually had to thank Elder Luo's sunflower seeds. If it weren't for the seeds replenishing his consumed spiritual power, he might have run out of strength and found it very difficult to maintain this level. Elder Luo and Yi Changfeng exchanged glances, their expressions shocked, and they struggled to regain their composure. Broke through? He had reached the Meridian opening stage already? But hadn't he just broken through to the later stage of Qi controlling at the start of school? September, October, in just 2 months from the later stage of Qi controlling to the Meridian opening stage? Wait, something's not right. Let me sort this out, Elder Luo said. It seemed Elder Luo hadn't yet grasped the situation. He gestured with his hands for nearly a minute, as if analyzing something. Despite having heavily invested in his own mental calculation skills, he still hadn't clarified it. Just a few days ago, he had done the same thing, worrying that he had calculated incorrectly and specifically recalculating several times. But now, the situation seemed off. Why did it still seem like he had calculated incorrectly after being so meticulous? After a long while, he suddenly stood up and yelled at Xiang Beifei. "You broke through to the meridian opening stage?" Tone 6666. Xiang Beifei had just been cracking sunflower seeds, but Elder Luo was too emotional and didn't control his tone well, the fearsome sound directly causing Xiang Beifei's mind to go blank. It took him a long while to come back to his senses. His ears still ringing, unable to hear the outside world, he yelled in confusion, "Why are you yelling so loudly?" Sorry. I couldn't hold back." Elder Luo quickly pulled on Xiang Beifei's ear, using his own ability to clear the noise in Xiang Beifei's head. Then, still in astonishment, he asked, "Are you really in the meridian opening stage?" "Yes. Opening the meridians was indeed a bit tough. I locked myself in my room for 5 days and only managed to open up a short meridian of half a meter, which is far too short compared to 96,000 kilometers," Xiang Beifei said seriously. "Elder Luo."
Ye Changfeng.
The two looked at each other in bewilderment. 5 days? And opened half a meter? And you're still not satisfied? If it was that easy, why would S-level students need 3 to 4 years to open a meridian? Why would some R-level students not be able to open a meridian even after graduating? Many people might not even be able to open a meter in a year, and you did it in 5 days, yet you're still... You must be here just to infuriate people. Asking for a beating. Huh? Elder Luo and Yi Changfeng's faces twitched incessantly, and they nearly burst into curses. Elder Luo quickly recovered his composure, placed his hands on his hips, and burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha! I knew it! My judgment is never wrong. Ha ha ha!" Yi Changfeng still hadn't snapped out of it, and he was suddenly dumbfounded. If it were an SSR Awakener who had now reached the meridian opening phase, he would have totally accepted it since that was quite normal. But the problem was, Xiang Beifei wasn't an SSR. He had entered school as an N-level person. Wait, could he be an SSR? Yi Changfeng could no longer view his junior normally. For a moment, he even wanted to grab his sharp sword and drag Xiang Beifei to the desolate beast dissection room for research. Did you see it? Elder Luo, ecstatic, vigorously patted Yi Changfeng's shoulder. "Are you still worried Liangzhou University has no freshmen in the meridian opening phase for the competition? We may not have SSR-level students at Liangzhou University, but we do have an N-level Awakener."
Ye Changfeng.
Something about that statement seemed off. "Why are you standing there? Come on. Get out every sword you can. We need to fully arm Beifei," Elder Luo said. "Okay." Yi Changfeng had just been worrying about which sword could help Xiang Beifei, but now that Xiang Beifei had reached the meridian opening phase, he didn't need to think that much anymore. "Hold on. Don't waste them," Xiang Beifei quickly said. "There's still a month left. Giving them to me now is useless. Wait until then, and I'll tell you what I need." Elder Luo and Yi Changfeng were too excited and about to equip Xiang Beifei, but stopped when reminded by him. "Right, you just broke through to the meridian opening phase this morning. Your meridians should be very small, probably just a small section." Elder Luo began, then paused. In his mind, a small section should be about the size of a fingertip. Half a meter. Does that count as a small section? Elder Luo decided to ignore that and continued. "In a month, you should be able to develop more meridians. Then I'll give you whatever you need. I will even trade items from the God refining phase. But what do you need right now? Everyone's cultivation base is different, and high-level system items are not necessarily what Xiang Beifei wants. Only the items that suit him are the best." Xiang Beifei thought for a moment and said, "Sunflower seeds. I only need sunflower seeds." Elder Luo's sunflower seeds were a divine artifact for meridian development. He had just cracked a few and found that the meridians within his body seemed to be subtly twitching, ready to grow further. "Sunflower seeds?" Elder Luo frowned. "I have so many good items, and you only want sunflower seeds?" I found that sunflower seeds have the ability to develop meridians, which you never told me about, Xiang Beifei said. Elder Luo hesitated for a moment and then said, That's not right. My sunflower seeds don't have the ability to develop meridians. They can only replenish lost spiritual power. If his sunflower seeds had that ability, he would have already cultivated a bunch of powerful meridian opening phase students. They don't. Xiang Beifei was a bit confused. He hadn't seen anything about this ability on Elder Luo's system interface. Touching his chin, he added, But my meridians were definitely acting up just now. I feel like they've grown a bit longer. As he spoke, he suddenly realized that his way of cultivation had always been different from others. While others cultivated slowly and needed the system to forcibly transform their bodies to open meridians, he seemed only to need to absorb spiritual power to grow his meridians. Sunflower seeds happened to be a type of spiritual power replenisher, and strangely enough, cracking Elder Luo's sunflower seeds enabled his meridians to grow. Elder Luo was also quite incredulous. Your meridians grow by cracking my sunflower seeds? After all, he never experienced such an effect when he ate sunflower seeds. He had to develop his meridians by himself. Yes, Xiang Beifei nodded. Elder Luo suddenly felt uneasy. Why didn't his sunflower seeds develop his own meridians, but they could for this kid? Last time his SR system concluded that Xiang Beifei was more suited to spiritual power cultivation, and now his sunflower seeds had a special effect on Xiang Beifei too. Could it be that his own system was biased outward? Good grief, this traitorous system. Are you sure you only want sunflower seeds? Elder Luo asked again. Xiang Beifei nodded. Elder Luo, rather reluctantly, quickly brought out 5 large bags of sunflower seeds and said, Here, take these, all these sunflower seeds are for you. If you don't eat sunflower seeds for long, the spiritual power will dissipate. Finish these and come ask for more. There's plenty. Okay. Xiang Beifei quickly accepted all the sunflower seeds. Yi Changfeng watched by the side, his face speechless. Who would have thought that after Xiang Beifei broke through to the meridian opening phase, he would not ask them for more powerful system items, but for Elder Luo's sunflower seeds. Okay. Since Xiang Beifei has reached the meridian opening phase, we can now report it to the school. Yi Changfeng said. Don't rush. Elder Luo extended his hand with a wave, halting Yi Changfeng. He furrowed his brows and pondered for a moment before snorting and said, Keep this matter a secret for now. Right now, the people from the other schools are probably waiting to laugh at Liangzhou University. Let's endure for now and catch them off guard when the time comes. The other 8 schools were already aware that Liangzhou University had no SSR. Last year, Liangzhou University ranked 4th, and now the 5 schools behind it are eagerly plotting to push Liangzhou University to the last position. If Liangzhou University were to suddenly reveal a meridian opening phase candidate, those 5 schools would definitely investigate Xiang Beifei. At that time, for the sake of their own school's reputation, who knows if they might harbor ulterior motives. Xiang Beifei was currently only at the early stage of meridian opening and belonged to the weakest part of that phase. Even within the early stage of meridian opening, different individuals had varying strengths, and this difference was manifested in the length of the meridians they had opened. In the meridian opening phase, one needs to open 96,000 kilometers of meridians, which means that cultivators at the early stage of meridian opening need to open at least 1/3, that is, 32,000 kilometers of meridians to advance to the mid-stage of meridian opening. However, Xiang Beifei had only opened less than half a meter, not very strong yet. Elder Luo couldn't keep an eye on Xiang Beifei 24 hours a day, so the safest approach was to keep this matter under wraps for now. Yi Changfeng also realized this and said, Right. I was too excited just now and almost forgot. Chao Pei and Wei Tong, those guys are so concerned about their reputation. They don't have any meridian opening phase candidates this year, and they must be extremely anxious now. Let's let them be anxious to death. On the day of the competition, we'll let Xiang Beifei reveal his strength, and then we can slap them hard. Let's see how they have the face to speak like they did before me. Elder Luo was never easy to deal with. He wouldn't be polite to principals and deans. Those people had been critical of Xiang Beifei since the beginning of school, but all were blocked by him. He disliked such people the most. Understood, said Yi Changfeng. Xiang Beifei asked, by the way, does each school need 5 freshmen? Are the lists already decided? Not yet, because it's not the final moment, and it's unclear who is more outstanding. So, this month, we plan to select 4 individuals from these 11 SR Awakeners, explained Yi Changfeng. Xiang Beifei would definitely participate. Even if he didn't break through to the meridian opening phase, the school would still let him compete. After all, he had long been an unmatched body cultivation student in the chi controlling phase, and his strength was evident, easily overpowering any SR youth with a single punch. This year, the school admitted 14 SR freshmen, 3 of whom chose the liberal arts college. They didn't possess high combat strength and could only participate in some activities organized by the liberal arts college. Thus, these freshman competitions fell to the 11 SRs of the martial arts college. But it had only been 2 months since school started. While the SR freshmen had strong learning abilities and were fairly familiar with the necessary knowledge, they still required training. The cultivation progress of SR Awakeners wasn't as rapid as that of SSRs. For example, in Xiang Beifei's dormitory, only Long Guoqing and Li Zimu had reached the later stage of qi controlling, while Meng Yuekai was still at the mid-stage. There was still a gap between them. However, this gap wasn't too big in Xiang Beifei's view. Meng Yuekai would probably catch up in just about 10 to 15 days. Come on, we need to focus on cultivating now. First, we need to stabilize the meridians in your body, and then I will set up a cultivation plan for you. Elder Luo sent Yi Changfeng away as he wanted to focus on teaching Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei followed Elder Luo and trained for another week, cracking sunflower seeds and quickly consolidating his realm. Under Elder Luo's guidance, he avoided many detours. His meridians were now covering his fists, and Elder Luo's sunflower seeds were still a miraculous aid in his improvement. After stabilizing the meridians in his body, Xiang Beifei began to think about the capabilities of the meridian opening phase. He needed more spiritual power crystals to light up the first constellation of the meridian opening phase. Currently, he only had a purgatory armor from Yuqishin. Normally, asking for Elder Luo's help was not a problem, but fleecing benefits should be done from outsiders, not from one's own people. He originally wanted to seek out the SSR Awakener, Ho Chenggu, but Xiaohe said the distance was too far and would require a trip to Qingzhou. He pondered for a while and decided it wasn't urgent for the moment. He would definitely encounter Ho Chenggu next time. Just standing on the stage, Xiang Beifei would reset his cultivation with a single thought, without even needing to fight, delivering a slap directly. So, he was thinking of trying to kill a meridian opening phase desolate beast. Xiang Beifei didn't want to impose on Elder Luo, so he decided to use a beast pill instead. A desolate beast's beast pill could also light up a constellation. Xiang Beifei explained his requirements to Elder Luo, who looked somewhat puzzled. You need a meridian opening phase beast pill? Yes. I know meridian opening phase beast pills might be hard to find. Not hard to find. God refining phase beast pills are hard to find, not the meridian opening ones. I'll help you go and kill one. Elder Luo immediately didn't care about anything else. He stood up from his recliner and prepared to run to the domain beyond, but then turned around and asked, Is this beast pill for your system task? Must you kill it yourself? Or can someone else help? There's no such requirement, Xiang Beifei said. Good. Just wait at home. I'll make a trip myself. Elder Luo didn't mind the trouble at all, and was happy to run the errand for Xiang Beifei. Can I go? Can I take action? Xiang Beifei asked eagerly. Although Elder Luo could solve it with a move, Xiang Beifei wanted to test his own strength. Currently, his fists had opened up their meridians, and the power was still there in a punch. Oh sure, that works. I can also teach you some things too. Elder Luo took a step forward. With a tremble of his spiritual power, he enveloped Xiang Beifei and dashed toward the domain beyond. The desolate yellow sand was swirling, kicking up a sky full of flying dust. This was a barren desert gobi. Marquee Domain Zone 36, a second-level danger zone, No longer like the cultivated domain you visited before, most of the desolate beasts here are at the meridian opening stage. You can go in and look for something suitable. Elder Luo had brought Xiang Beifei here but did not proceed any further. He could easily handle any of the desolate beasts here, but Xiang Beifei planned to face them himself, so Elder Luo refrained from intervening. All right. Xiang Beifei didn't need to search for any specific desolate beast. He would just randomly pick a few and take down whoever he encountered, without being choosy. You haven't been here before, and don't know what desolate beasts exist here, so I won't introduce them to you. You'll have to figure things out on your own, Elder Luo said sternly. Although he valued Xiang Beifei as a treasure, he was cultivating successors for the future of Juzhou. If Xiang Beifei were to explore the wilderness beyond the domains in the future, he would need to explore on his own. Any desolate beast could be encountered in the wilderness beyond the domains, unlike in a simulated class where the types of desolate beasts were prearranged and everyone was prepared. The desolate beasts in the wilderness beyond were not fixed. This required on-the-spot responsibilities. Xiang Beifei understood this, and without any hesitation, he walked into the shallow shores of the Gobi. The wind in the Gobi was strong, whipping up sand like blades, scraping deep grooves into the Gobi's surface. In the distance, it seemed that a sand dragon tornado was forming, and the wind-blown sand roared like dragons in the sky, rushing and crashing, wanting to destroy something, but then swiftly disappearing. As Xiang Beifei walked forward, stepping over an exposed rock, he paused for a moment and then planned to head toward the Gobi. However, he hadn't walked more than a few steps when the ground's quicksand suddenly started undulating like waves, layer upon layer. He furrowed his brows, preparing to leap backward when a flash of light suddenly snaked silently around his ankle, pulling him into the midst of the sand and mud. The thing moved incredibly swiftly. Xiang Beifei hadn't even realized how the desolate beast had appeared under his feet. This desolate beast buried in the sand was very powerful. Its strength was definitely at the meridian opening stage. His spiritual power covered his feet in an instant, and he fiercely stoked up flames, scorching toward that tendril. The tendril, seeming to fear his flames, immediately loosened, but by then the sand under Xiang Beifei's feet was rolling like a marsh and directly surged upward. Unable to leverage any force, his body was suddenly buried in the sand. Elder Luo next to him watched Xiang Beifei intently, his spiritual power constantly clinging to Xiang Beifei, monitoring him. But suddenly, it was as if a stream of magma rose from the sand, and rolling flames spread from the gaps, immediately causing the entire patch of sand to explosively burst open with a boom, and all of the sand was forcibly lightened, becoming as light as feathers. The wind in the desert blew even stronger, and with the sand lightened, it was immediately swept up into the air. Xiang Beifei stood in the midst of a sand pit, staring at the brown desolate beast before him. This desolate beast was very small, resembling a peculiar mole, but it was covered in hard-scale armor and had many long tentacles on its head, which still slightly twitched with grains of sand clinging to them.
Illusory Sandrat.
Xiang Beifei slightly furrowed his brows. He recognized this kind of desolate beast, whose strength was extremely formidable. Ordinary experts at the initial stage of meridian opening might not be able to kill it effortlessly, for it possessed a rather eccentric ability. The sand rat firmly fixed its gaze on Xiang Beifei, then suddenly lunged at him. Xiang Beifei's fist instantly enveloped in flames, and he threw a punch straight at the oncoming sand rat. Wham! The sand rat's entire body directly turned to sand, taking on the appearance of sand, and Xiang Beifei's punch passed right through its body, but simultaneously, those grains of sand quickly morphed into a rat's head. It bared its hard teeth and bit down on Xiang Beifei's wrist. Xiang Beifei's wrist immediately trembled, forcefully vibrating out a firm wave of spiritual power that circulated in a very unique way. The sand rat's teeth clamped onto his wrist but were immediately blocked by his counterforce, and the counteracting spiritual power reversed and hammered back at the sand rat's teeth. Wham! The sand rat was directly shattered into sand by Xiang Beifei's spiritual power. However, the wind picked up again, and those grains of sand in the air once again gradually took the form of a sand rat. Heavy as Mount Tai can't affect it. Xiang Beifei felt somewhat somber inside. The illusory sand rat's formidable nature lay here, being able to turn its body into sand. A punch that hit it only turned it into broken sand, but these sands would re-agglomerate. This meant it feared no robust force. Even if Xiang Beifei's counterforce shattered the sand rat's teeth while it bit him, it could still reconstitute. And since the illusory sand rat was a desolate beast of the meridian opening stage, it could turn into sand, which also allowed it to resist Xiang Beifei's gravity, making it impossible for Xiang Beifei to restrain it. The books mentioned that there were two methods to kill an illusory sand rat. One was to use the saliva-based soluble gel from a ghost bug to stick it together, preventing it from turning into sand, and then ignite the gel to burn it to death. The other was to suppress it directly with a higher level of cultivation. The water-soluble glue was a tool manufactured by the Black Technology Department. Xiang Beifei didn't apply for such black technologies this time since Elder Luo was with him, which was equivalent to a training expedition. He intended to rely on himself instead. As for the second method, the strength of the sand rat was not weaker than Xiang Beifei's at all. Neither method was feasible for Xiang Beifei. Without the water-soluble glue, Beifei won't be able to immobilize the sand rat. What's he going to do now? Elder Luo watched from a distance, pondering lightly. In fact, even with water-soluble glue, it's very difficult to kill a sand rat because it sandifies at an extremely fast rate. How could it possibly stand still and let itself be stuck by the water-soluble glue? Therefore, normally, the second method is the simplest and most reliable. Generally speaking, when pioneers encounter such desolate beasts outside of the domain, and water-soluble glue is ineffective, and there are no high-level awakeners in the team with matching capabilities, experienced people would choose to withdraw immediately instead of fighting the sand rat. Otherwise, it would be a wasted effort. Xiang Beifei had only just entered the meridian opening stage not long ago and was almost unable to do it. Just need me to say the word, Elder Luo said from a distance. Xiang Beifei, as if turning a deaf ear, rushed towards the illusory sand rat again, his figure moving fast to an extreme. Whoosh! His fist, burning with explosive flames, slammed towards the head of the sand rat. The sand rat instantly turned to sand again, and Xiang Beifei's fist felt as if it had hit cotton, light and without any point of impact, while the sand in the air formed into four paws and grabbed at Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei swung his fist and dispersed the four paws, but the sand rat's head had reformed behind Xiang Beifei and bit at him once more. Bang! Although Xiang Beifei's back blocked the sand rat's teeth, its tail struck his back fiercely. Even though it dispersed instantly, the immense force sent Xiang Beifei flying out. The sand rat's mode of attack was very strange. It was as if it had split itself into countless parts, with limbs engaging the enemy head-on, while its head could condense separately in the sandy wind behind the opponent, catching them by surprise. This was also the reason many found the illusory sand rat troublesome, because fighting it was like fighting a monster that could disintegrate its body. Head, hands, tail. Fighting independently, it broke itself into several parts, each capable of mounting a separate attack from different directions. Xiang Beifei immediately stabilized his figure in midair, and through the several exchanges, he had gradually analyzed the patterns of the sand rat's changes. Swish! When the sand rat's body sandified again, Xiang Beifei immediately threw out breath soil. Breath soil was originally a special kind of divine clay that could congeal into various shapes, but that also meant it could directly disperse, turning into fine sand. Rustle! The head of the sand rat quickly condensed and snapped at Xiang Beifei's neck, but as it condensed, it suddenly felt something was wrong. It felt as if something strange had mixed into its body, making it much more sluggish. A trace of astonishment appeared in the eyes of the sand rat. For some reason, it found itself forcibly fixed in midair. When you attack, you have to condense your form, but the air isn't only filled with your sand particles. Xiang Beifei cocked his head and grabbed the head of the sand rat. Then, with explosive flames ignited on his fist, he hammered it straight into the sand rat's head and clenched his fist with force. Rustle! This time the sand rat couldn't sandify anymore because Xiang Beifei already had a grip on its beast pill, holding it in his hand. Without its beast pill, the sand rat died instantly, and its body turned into a pile of loose sand that fell to the ground. Interesting. Elder Luo smiled thoughtfully as he looked at Xiang Beifei. This was the first time Xiang Beifei had been thrown into the wilds beyond the domain, and Elder Luo hadn't seen how Beifei had acted. It was also the first time he witnessed how Beifei dealt with a desolate beast. However, he didn't quite understand how Beifei had immobilized the illusory sand rat without hydrogel, a specialized high-tech product designed to counter it. What is that thing you used? Elder Luo inquired. It's also a kind of soil that specifically restrains it. Beifei's method was quite simple. He didn't have hydrogel, but he had breath soil, which turned sandy and diffused into the air after dehydration. He had already completely grasped the locations of the illusory sand rat's attacks through learn by analogy. But that was far from sufficient, because it kept dispersing and he couldn't hit it. Beifei knew that the illusory sand rat could condense, and during this process, the weathered breath soil would mix right into the body of the sand rat, which meant that as the illusory sand rat condensed its body, it was mixing the breath soil into itself. Thus, the breath soil became akin to a part of the sand rat. The power of the breath soil firmly latched onto the body of the sand rat, and when it attempted to turn to sand again, it found itself unable to do so. At this moment, Beifei's breath soil manifested the ability to abruptly stop, which completely immobilized the sand rat. Then he could easily smash its head with a punch and take its beast pill. Good lad, I underestimated you. Elder Luo laughed heartily. It seems this trip really turned into quite the show for me. Elder Luo was full of anticipation. He knew Beifei was highly talented, but he had hardly ever seen him truly take action. This time, bringing Beifei with him was less about helping him hunt Meridian opening phase desolate beasts for their inner cores, and more about observing Beifei's real combat strength. This kid always brought him all sorts of surprises, and suddenly he couldn't wait to witness next month's elite freshman competition and see how Beifei would perform. After the illusory sand rat was blasted apart, it disintegrated into a heap of sand. Born from sand, it left no corpse upon death to be studied, only a beast pill. To conduct research, they would need a space-type pioneer to capture it alive and confine it in an inescapable cage. But Beifei was here for the beast pill in the first place, so it made no difference to him whether the illusory sand rat left behind a corpse. As long as he obtained the beast pill, that was all that mattered. This beast pill was sufficient to light up a star constellation. Elder Luo looked on at Beifei with satisfaction, but at that moment he sensed something and turned his gaze toward the left side of the gobi, contemplating for a moment before saying, "Go over there and try that desolate beast. That one is quite special and rare. You need to come into contact with various strange desolate beasts." All right. With Elder Luo present, Beifei didn't need to worry about anything. Whatever Elder Luo suggested he would learn. Beifei headed towards the gobi on the left. The closer he got, the more he felt a strange sensation, as if countless eyes were watching him. Yet he didn't know where the watcher was. He scanned every rock on the gobi, every crevice in the sandstone, searching for the source of the gaze. He did see a scorpion enveloped in flames peeking out of the crevices in the rock face. But in Beifei's perception, this scorpion had only the strength of the later stages of chi controlling, clearly not the target Elder Luo intended for him to kill. The gobi's rocks were deeply cut in many places by swiftly blowing sand, some of the ravines even reaching depths of more than 10 meters. These ravines appeared as though they had been purposely cleared, devoid of sand accumulation, and the wind passing through them carried an echo. Ding, ding, ding. Crisp chime-like sounds played slowly, ringing pleasantly. These sounds came from the crevices in the rocks of the gobi, the natural formations acting like musical instruments with varying depths corresponding to different musical notes. The wind seemed to consciously blow through these crevices, each one producing a unique tone, and taken together, they formed a marvelous melody. Beifei listened to the music, knowing there was something eerie about it, but unable to determine what was playing the tune. If one insisted it was the work of the wind, it didn't seem convincing, because he could sense that when the wind blew across that rocky area, it seemed to be disturbed by something, making it more like some invisible desolate beast was controlling the wind. Yet what this desolate beast was, he couldn't be sure. Xiang Beifei couldn't think of a corresponding desolate beast at the moment, so he decided to take a look at the strange rocks to see if he could block the crevices and prevent them from emitting sounds again. However, just as he approached the gobi, before his foot even touched the ground, a huge shadow suddenly appeared on the rocks of the gobi. It was a gigantic white ape with wounds all over its body, roughly over 3 meters tall and extremely muscular. It had 4 arms. 2 of them had steel-like white blades, resembling 2 gleaming steel knives. One of the ape's arms seemed broken, with a grisly white bone protruding from where the limb had been torn off, as if it had just been ripped apart, and it was unclear who had done it. Xiang Beifei recognized this white ape as a very powerful desolate beast called the Blade Ape, known for its special characteristic of attacking its enemies with its steel-like bladed arms, a particularly violent type of ape desolate beast. The Blade Ape had come from the other side of the gobi, and when it saw Xiang Beifei, its eyes filled with boundless rage. Roar! The 3-armed saber ape waved its 2 sabers angrily, chopping at Xiang Beifei. The 2 sabers were incredibly formidable, with their blades flashing, whooshing through the air, and mixing with formidable force. The power of the strike made even Xiang Beifei frown slightly. It was much stronger than him, probably at least the power of the mid-stage meridian opening. The Blade Ape's blade crashed forth, locking onto Xiang Beifei with deadly intent and a terrifying aura. With one slash, it seemed to cut 1,000,000 times, locking down every possible direction for Xiang Beifei. So strong! Xiang Beifei held his breath and watched intently. The strike was not for play. His fists immediately conjured up powerful flames that roared and interweaved in front of him, forming a burst of violent gusts. Xiang Beifei also channeled the counter-blade cultivation technique on his body, driving it into the gust in front of him. Boom! The terrifying blade light smashed onto Xiang Beifei's violent gust. The immense force spread rapidly, making Xiang Beifei feel as if he'd been hit by a small mountain. The sinister blade was incredibly powerful and rolled toward him. He had tried his best to use counterblade to fight back the blade's light, but the opponent's strength was much greater than his, making it impossible to dissipate the tremendous force completely. He was still blasted away. Bang! Xiang Beifei was sent flying backward 10 or so meters by the force, feeling as if his chest was being crushed by a massive stone, almost suffocating him. He crashed into the rocks behind him, smashing them into powder. What a wicked thing! Xiang Beifei touched his chest where it seemed he had broken a rib. The Blade Ape's cultivation level was strong, stronger than him, at least in the mid-stage of meridian opening. He had only just stepped into the meridian opening phase recently and was utterly incapable of withstanding the force. Strange! How could a 4-armed Blade Ape appear in this desert? Xiang Beifei quickly pondered in his mind. He remembered that the book said 4-armed Blade Apes like to hide in snowy areas, not deserts. The Blade Ape did not give Xiang Beifei any time to think. As if blinded by rage, it swung its shiny saber at him again. No good! I can't take it head-on. Xiang Beifei's gaze sharpened. He knew the weakness of this type of Blade Ape. Their whole body was tough, and it was very hard to cut through their hide without the power of the mid-stage meridian opening, except for an acupoint on the neck about the size of a thumb. That was where the Blade Ape's beast pill was located. If he could poke into it, he could kill the creature. Xiang Beifei immediately got up, ignoring the pain, and thrust his hand forcefully into the sandy soil beneath him. His spiritual power rapidly spread into the sand. The sand, filled with a yellow haze, was made lighter by force and quickly floated into the air, then changed direction. The sand became heavy again. Each grain weighed a pound and instantly smashed down on the Blade Ape. He first needed to restrict the Blade Ape's speed, then, by surprise, strike its fatal point. Boom! 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 Each grain of sand weighing a pound, the numerous grains descended like meteorites, thunderously striking the Blade Ape. At the same time, Xiang Beifei took the opportunity to use the sand as cover and dashed closer to the blade ape. However, Xiang Beifei soon startled, because the sand actually went through the blade ape's body as if it was an illusion, unable to be hit by the grains at all, and the breath soil in his hand had already turned into a blade, stabbing at the blade ape's neck. But his breath soil also passed through the blade ape's body, completely missing. Was this an illusion? Xiang Beifei was quite surprised. He remembered blade apes only relied on brute strength and their two large sabers to fight, without any special ability to dodge attacks. Its physique was already tough, and most of the time it took hits head-on. But on second thought, it didn't seem right. If it were an illusion, why did the blade ape's strike on his own violent gust produce such terrifying power earlier? Xiang Beifei couldn't be certain of this at the moment. This blade ape that didn't belong here had abilities completely different from the blade apes he understood. But the blade ape had already recovered and swung its hand again, blasting Xiang Beifei out, sending him crashing into the ground, creating a trench 20 meters long. Why is this creature so eerily strange? Xiang Beifei was lucky to have the chi-controlling shield protecting him. But even so, he was dizzy and disoriented. He had just been struck by the third arm of the blade ape, and it felt like his bones were all out of place. This was the first time he had been in such a sorry state. In his previous excursions into the outer desolate wilderness, he had relied on his knowledge of desolate beasts to kill them directly. Even the last time he encountered the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage, he had forcefully killed it with fire. But the problem was that this blade ape was not at all like the desolate beast Xiang Beifei had imagined. Its abilities were not as recorded in the books. At that moment, a deadly blade light approached chillingly, and the blade ape roared and closed in again, slashing towards Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei supported himself with his hands on the ground and quickly put some distance between them. Bang! The blade ape's sword struck where Xiang Beifei had just been, slashing a 5-meter deep trench into the ground. Damn! This creature's blade intent is so powerful, almost comparable to an awakener of the blade cultivator system. Its body was a phantom, but that attack was certainly not. When did the blade ape mutate? Xiang Beifei's brows furrowed deeply. To him, this 3-armed saber ape was a phantom, but to it, he was tangible. A normal blade ape didn't have this ability. So what was this blade ape in front of him? Real or fake? Thoughts raced through Xiang Beifei's mind. You can ask me for advice. Elder Luo's voice leisurely reached Xiang Beifei's ears. You watch Xiang Beifei getting thrashed by a desolate beast. Leisure value plus 66. He was thoroughly enjoying the spectacle from the sidelines. When Xiang Beifei turned his head and saw this task prompt pop up on Elder Luo's system interface, 3 black lines appeared on his forehead. Let's talk after I've crushed it. Xiang Beifei's fighting spirit was aroused. Although he knew nothing about this seemingly mutated desolate beast, asking Elder Luo for advice was a good idea. However, he was here to train, and in the future, he would inevitably face many unknown desolate beasts without Elder Luo always by his side to offer reminders. So he still planned to figure out a way to deal with this desolate beast on his own. Once he figured out how to deal with this desolate beast, he would get to know it better. You really are stubborn, Elder Luo said with a slight smile when he heard Xiang Beifei's words. But that's the spirit a young man should have. He was quite appreciative in his heart. People always need to go through various hardships in order to grow. Unknown challenges can swiftly foster growth. Xiang Beifei paid no attention to Elder Luo. He was fully focused on the 3-armed saber ape in front of him, which was even harder to deal with than the illusory sand rat he had encountered earlier. He could at least strike the illusory sand rat, but he couldn't even land a hit on this 3-armed saber ape. Bang! The 3-armed saber ape, as if enraged, was determined not to stop until it killed Xiang Beifei. Each of its slashes gouged trenches into the ground, terrifying to behold. Xiang Beifei blocked one of its slashes, but the force sent him flying. He wasn't faring well at all. Xiang Beifei crashed to the ground, a mouthful of sand, and then again leaped to his feet, throwing a punch towards the creature's body. However, his fist brushed past the ape's body, utterly failing to connect with the target. But the blade ape's swinging arms came slashing over again, heading straight for his neck. He had no choice but to block again, raising the chi-controlling shield to defend. Bang! Xiang Beifei was once again sent flying by the blow, and with a bang, smashed the ground into a deep pit. This isn't a normal blade ape. What's gone wrong? Xiang Beifei spat out the sand in his mouth, panting heavily as he stared at the three-armed saber ape. This kind of fight was uncomfortable for him. The blade ape's cultivation level was a tier above his own, and he simply couldn't withstand it. This frustrated style of fighting was much like when he had dealt with Julong Cruise Slayers. Zhu Xinjue couldn't hit him, but he could hit Zhu Xinjue. Back then, Xiang Beifei had taken advantage of the opponent's system space flaw, where their attacks were asymmetric, so he had used his chi-controlling cultivation to forcibly defeat Zhu Xinjue, who was at the Meridian opening stage. Now, facing the blade ape, the situation was similar. He couldn't hit the blade ape, but the blade ape could hit him. Their attacks were asymmetric. Wait, the attacks are asymmetric? The books mentioned that the blade ape did not have the ability to make attacks asymmetric, and there was nothing unusual about the space here, so it was not the same situation as last time. If it was not about the space, it must be something else. The wind in the Gobi was still blowing through the gullies, making a pleasant sound that kept echoing. If anything was amiss, it seemed to be just these sounds. A spark seemed to flash through Xiang Beifei's mind. What type of desolate beast could produce asymmetrical effects in its attacks? He suddenly remembered that Elder Luo had explained some special desolate beasts to him at the beginning of the school year, many of which had very odd attacks that were not so easily countered. One such beast was very representative, which Xiang Beifei remembered vividly. That desolate beast was called Meng Huai. In an instant, he understood. So that's it, he said. I thought you were incredibly powerful. Turns out you attack in this manner. Xiang Beifei spat out the sand in his mouth and then stood up, calmly staring at the three-armed saber ape that was once again slashing towards him. The terrifying blade light of the ape tore through the howling emptiness, as if it wanted to split the windswept, sandy desert in front of it into a crevice. Its blade light thundered towards Xiang Beifei's face. But this time, Xiang Beifei did not dodge but stared fixedly at his opponent. As the blade light split the wind and sand, his eyes gleamed faintly. The air around seemed filled with an invisible ripple, and all the sand near Xiang Beifei appeared to stand still. Whiz! The domineering blade edge of the three-armed saber ape thundered towards him, chopping at Xiang Beifei's head. Xiang Beifei did not dodge. He did not need to dodge. The terrifyingly domineering blade edge that had cut at him felt as though it had sliced through a shadow. Xiang Beifei was unharmed. It was as if he had controlled the weighted sand to counter the three-armed saber ape just moments ago. He could not hit the ape, and this time, the ape couldn't hit him either. Since you can use asymmetric attacks, he said, I will turn it into a symmetric attack which makes things simple. Xiang Beifei's eyes sparkled with a strange glow, and his spiritual power quickly spread out. The white ape was clearly stunned when it failed to hit Xiang Beifei. However, Xiang Beifei did not give it the chance to recover, leaping forward and charging at the three-armed saber ape. A nearly invisible wave spread from his hand, and the flames on his fist seemed to transform, all the flames appearing to stop and yet spread rapidly. Scram! Xiang Beifei, faced with the blade light of the three-armed saber ape, punched directly at it. The exploding flames stirred a strong ripple in the air, twisting the wind and sand around, and a domineering aura enveloped the ape. The three-armed saber ape also roared angrily, raising its two blades once more. The blade edges, mixed with an immense force, seemed as if they would tear through the void, even making the air muddy as they chopped down. The ape's blade cut at Xiang Beifei's shoulder, still slicing through Xiang Beifei's body. However, Xiang Beifei's fist landed squarely on the chest of the three-armed saber ape. Bang! The three-armed saber ape was sent flying by Xiang Beifei's punch, heavily slamming into a rock wall and creating a massive hole. The ape struggled to stand up, but Xiang Beifei's gaze was already fixed on it. His spiritual power swept up. Whirl! A burst of exploding flames suddenly engulfed the three-armed saber ape, The flames burned so intensely that they quickly consumed the entire body of the ape. It roared angrily, but it was to no avail, as it couldn't escape the flames. In an instant, its body turned into strange, rapidly burning waves and disappeared into the sand wind. It's not only you who knows how to use asymmetric attacks against others. Xiang Beifei watched as his spiritual power burned the three-armed saber ape into nothing. Then he reached into his pocket, took out a sunflower seed, and put it in his mouth. So can I. He calmly spat out a sunflower seed shell. This kid, he noticed so quickly? Elder Luo looked at Xiang Beifei with a rather surprised expression. From being unilaterally beaten by the three-armed saber ape at the beginning to now being in the same situation and withstanding the ape's assault, the whole process had been completed in just a brief 10 minutes. The so-called asymmetric attack is a kind of mental assault. After Xiang Beifei passed Yuqishin's entrance examination, Elder Luo mentioned something to him. Many desolate beasts are very peculiar, and some are not afraid of physical attacks at all. At that time, Elder Luo gave him an example of a desolate beast called Meng Huai. This kind of beast is intangible and exists only in dreams. It can drag people into dreams and then kill them there. This method is extremely strange. In the dream, even if the person has a strong fist and powerful attack methods, they are ineffective against Meng Huai. To combat such beasts, there is only one way, and that is to use spiritual power. By using spiritual power, one can forcefully conjure various illusions in the dream to combat and kill Meng Huai. And the mental attack of Meng Huai is precisely an asymmetric attack. In the dream, it can kill pioneers. Those not adept at mental power can only passively take hits in the dream and cannot strike back at Meng Huai. The attack methods of the two sides are not compatible, hence asymmetric. The three-armed saber ape before him is not a real blade ape, but a desolate beast similar to Meng Huai. A strange illusion condensed by spiritual power. The blade's edge of the three-armed saber ape is an attack from spiritual power, so it can hit Xiang Beifei, while Xiang Beifei, relying on sheer brute strength, cannot touch the ape at all, and all his attack methods are ineffective against the three-armed saber ape. Thus, to deal with the three-armed saber ape, one can only rely on spiritual power. Good lad. Always bringing me surprises. Elder Luo had been teaching Beifei how to use spiritual power for several months, shouting various songs every day to temper his students' mental fortitude. Although Beifei had not yet climbed ashore from the great river, his spiritual power was growing stronger each day. He brought Xiang Beifei here, knowing that there were spiritual power desolate beasts in this area. So he let Xiang Beifei try his hand. Just now, Beifei quickly permeated his spiritual power throughout his body, which meant he had also developed a defense based on spiritual power. At this point, he only needed to rely on spiritual power to block that peerless blade's edge. Once blocked by spiritual strength, the blade could not cut into his true body. It's like Meng Huai kills people but can only do so in dreams. When a person is killed in a dream, their consciousness is erased, but their body remains unharmed. Even if the three-armed saber ape had hit him just now, it was actually only striking his mental consciousness, so in reality, his body would not be injured. The pain Beifei felt in his ribs as if they were breaking and not being able to withstand the blade's force was, in fact, just an illusion created by the attack on his mental consciousness by the blade ape. To kill the three-armed saber ape, Beifei only needed to wrap his fist in spiritual power and confront it. Now it's your turn. Xiang Beifei's gaze fell upon the rock wall. The ravines in the rock wall still emitted appealing sounds, as the wind blew over the differently indented stone walls. He stared intently at that part of the rock face, with his spiritual power swiftly spreading over it. Whoosh! Bursts of flame erupted from the rock face, pouring into the ravines. The roaring of the flames disrupted the strange tones in the air, and the melodious sound suddenly vanished. At this moment, a sharp screech pierced the air as a shadow rapidly emerged from the ravines, attempting to flee. However, Xiang Beifei's figure flashed, and he had already leaped high onto the gobi, hurling a punch at the fleeing shadow. Crack! A centipede, the size of a palm, was smashed to the ground with his punch and was instantly killed. It turned out to be a small centipede. Xiang Beifei looked at the centipede lying on the ground. In fact, the centipede was about 15 centimeters long, not small by any means, but compared to the desolate beasts of this foreign domain, 15 centimeters truly was minuscule. This is a silent centipede. Elder Luo came over, explaining with a look of admiration. Don't be fooled by its small size, and it might seem like it has low defensive power since a slap could kill it, but actually, it's one of the most domineering beasts in this region. Silent centipede. What a strange name. Xiang Beifei had not learned about this kind of desolate beast before. He picked up the centipede's body, prodded it, and then dug out a black beast pill. The beast pill of the meridian opening stage was wrapped in a morbid aura, but the spiritual power crystal contained within was of exceptionally high purity. The silent centipede is a type of desolate beast that utilizes spiritual power, similar to Meng Huai. Its own combat ability is very weak, but the thing about it is it can control sounds. This gobi is very special. Don't think that the place they inhabit lacks significance. This gobi has a very peculiar magnetic field capable of recording events. Elder Luo pointed at the blood-red gobi. The rocks looked dauntingly red as if they were about to drip blood. Each stone was weighty, with pebbles falling from it being heavier than the average stone. Magnetic field? Xiang Beifei was somewhat surprised, carefully examining the stones but not having noticed such magnetic fields. So, these stones are akin to iron ores. Yes, a magnetic field. Any recording of images relies on magnetism for storage. So that three-armed saber ape from earlier must have been a record of a battle one had here with another desolate beast. An event this beast captured using the gobi's magnetic field. It controls these magnetic fields by various depths of ravines, manipulating some special images with spiritual power, then launching attacks on any person or beast that passes by. Although these images were simulations, under the influence of spiritual power, they could unleash formidable destructive power. This was the bizarre aspect of desolate beasts. They managed to use spiritual power to manipulate the images recorded by magnetic fields and display such formidable combat power. Elder Luo's explanation also felt quite novel to Xiang Beifei. Desolate beasts at the meridian opening stage should certainly not be underestimated. They no longer relied solely on brute force to deal with others, but also used various bizarre physical abilities and spiritual power to confront humans, making them nearly impossible to guard against. Elder Luo walked over, fiddled with a crevice in the rock, and said, "The silent centipede's body is too weak, so it normally hides in these ravines. With the aid of the wind-formed sound waves and the manipulation of spiritual power, it hunts down smaller desolate beasts by utilizing past recorded scenes here, then burrows into the body of the desolate beasts and sucks their flesh and blood dry. This desolate beast is truly formidable," Xiang Beifei couldn't help but say. Desolate beasts in the meridian opening phase are all formidable. Upon saying this, Elder Luo paused for a moment, seemed to think of something, and then looked towards the depths of the wilderness outside the domain, a vast expanse of endless yellow sand. After a while, he slowly said, "Desolate beasts above the meridian opening phase are even more formidable because they have already possessed intelligence not inferior to humans. The library doesn't have detailed records of desolate beasts in the god-refining stage," said Xiang Beifei. "That's because desolate beasts in the god-refining stage are very intelligent, knowing how to protect themselves, making their weaknesses difficult to expose," Elder Luo said. "Desolate beasts in the chi-controlling stage only understand various brute strengths, relying on their tough fur and breathing fireballs, which already pose a challenge for many students. Desolate beasts in the meridian opening phase possess control over various bizarre abilities, which are even not inferior to human systematic abilities, causing ordinary martial artists a lot of headaches when facing them. However, desolate beasts in the chi-controlling and meridian opening stages, compared to human elites, are relatively easier to deal with. To study them, martial artists like Elder Luo often can capture them, then dissect them and discover their weaknesses. But god-refining stage desolate beasts represent a different qualitative change. Intelligent desolate beasts, possessing strong power, are hard to capture and even more unlikely to be dissected for learning freely. Therefore, even elite institutions like Liangzhou University have very few records on God-refining stage and above desolate beasts, simply because one does not know what to record. Xiang Beifei pondered for a moment and asked, "So, every time the Zhouzhou Alliance faces a large-scale beast tide, is it these intelligent desolate beasts that are orchestrating it?" Over thousands of years, the Zhouzhou Alliance had suffered countless beast tide attacks, with its territory constantly shrinking. All those desolate beasts originally lived well in their respective adapted wildernesses, many even natural enemies that would fight to the death upon encountering one another. But suddenly, at some point, they all dropped their grudges and collectively rushed toward the Alliance's borders, which definitely wasn't without aim. There was only one explanation. Highly intelligent desolate beasts covertly controlled and instigated the beast tides. Elder Luo withdrew his gaze and nodded slightly. Yes, intelligent desolate beasts are high-level and can drive lower-level desolate beasts. Just like us awakeners, systems of high-level talents suppress those of lower levels, and it is almost the same with desolate beasts. Xiang Beifei thoughtfully looked at the corpse of the silent centipede in his hand. Suddenly, he thought that this was just the Marquis domain, hosting only Meridian opening phase desolate beasts with such bizarre abilities. His parents had ventured into the Inquiring Dao, a 4th grade area. Didn't that imply that the desolate beasts there possessed very high intelligence? What exactly were his parents doing there? All right, let's not talk about such a heavy topic anymore. Got the energy? If not, chew on some seeds and then we can move on, Elder Luo said. Okay. Xiang Beifei stopped thinking about those concerns. He only wanted to focus on advancing his cultivation as soon as possible. He had already stepped into the Meridian opening phase and wanted to light up the 5th star and obtain the 5th ability. This time, he only needed 3 early Meridian opening stage beast pills. However, with Elder Luo's protection, he didn't mind killing a few more Meridian opening phase desolate beasts. Better safe than sorry, to avoid the hassle of making another trip later. In a single day, Xiang Beifei had nearly scoured the entire Gobi Desert for desolate beasts. He couldn't be bothered with those at the Qi controlling stage, and focused solely on hunting those at the Meridian opening stage. The killing process wasn't all smooth sailing. After slaying the 6th Meridian opening stage desolate beast, Xiang Beifei was a disheveled mess, barely able to get up from the ground. He was chewing sunflower seeds, recovering from his injuries. Elder Luo was sitting beside him on a rock, feeling both pity and helplessness. "You shouldn't have messed with later-stage Meridian opening desolate beasts," he said. Earlier, he had wanted to intervene several times, but hesitated because Xiang Beifei was stubborn and refused help unless it was a matter of life and death. Elder Luo was initially amused to see the boy in such a sorry state, but seeing Xiang Beifei nearly lose his life made him anxious. He couldn't sit still with his heart in his throat, worrying about an accident, especially since the boy refused to ask for help. "I didn't know it was a late-stage Meridian opening at first." Xiang Beifei sat up, looked at the wound on his chest, a deep gash almost revealing his ribs. However, Elder Luo's sunflower seeds were slowly healing him. He could handle early-stage Meridian opening desolate beasts, and with a bit of guidance from Elder Luo, he could barely manage the mid-stage ones by exploiting their weaknesses. But late-stage ones were far too powerful. The one just then, a giant scorpion, possessed a bizarre ability that trapped Xiang Beifei in a space where time seemed to stand still. He described his own movements as sluggish like an old man's, while the opponent struck as fast as lightning, nearly killing him. Fortunately, Xiang Beifei managed to escape the space in time because of Xiaohei's abilities, which were also somewhat effective against desolate beasts. This was his only consolation, but he dared not provoke those late-stage beasts again, knowing their weaknesses or not. "I wish I could reach Elder Luo's level of strength," Xiang Beifei said admiringly. Earlier, he had been chased by the giant scorpion all over the vast desert for 2 whole hours, desperately thinking of ways to defeat it, but the disparity in strength was too great. Eventually, Elder Luo, unable to bear it any longer, casually spit out a sunflower seed husk and killed the late-stage giant scorpion. What astounded Xiang Beifei most was that when Elder Luo spat out the sunflower seed husk to kill the giant scorpion, his system still displayed realm. When Elder Luo truly made a move, Xiang Beifei still couldn't see Elder Luo's realm. How high exactly is your cultivation level, Elder Luo? Xiang Beifei was truly astonished. He thought Elder Luo might be at the late stage of God refining, but that was still too optimistic. This Luo Yunxian was anything but simple. Don't rush for quick success. You've just begun meridian opening. Killing late-stage desolate beasts is unrealistic. Take it slow. One day you'll reach my level. Elder Luo patted Xiang Beifei on the shoulder, then pondered slightly as if thinking of something. He was wondering how many days this one day truly meant. Just a few days earlier, he boldly wagered it would take 2 months for Xiang Beifei to reach the meridian opening stage. Then Xiang Beifei casually took about a week, giving him quite a scare. Now, he dared not make such guarantees lightly anymore. After living a lifetime, one cannot always lose face in front of the younger generation. Besides, as it stands, Xiang Beifei's strength is improving like a ghost, almost at an SSR potential, and in his eyes already much stronger than SSR. Could he actually be the legendary UR level? Elder Luo looked at Xiang Beifei with suspicion. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that again? Xiang Beifei asked, wiping his face. Your awakening was a UR level system, wasn't it? Elder Luo asked, staring at Xiang Beifei. Why bring that up again? I've been to your school. Elder Luo did not conceal the fact and said directly, with you entering the meridian opening stage so quickly, I just couldn't help myself and sneaked off to your school to inquire about it, Li Nanxing told me. What did he say? About the event that day when you awakened, with the thunderstones flashing chaotically, said Elder Luo. Oh, Xiang Beifei didn't know how to explain. The day of the awakening ceremony, the thunderstone burst forth with golden flashes, and everyone thought he was at the UR level, but later, because the thunderstone ran out of power, it was downgraded back to N level, and the matter was left at that. Elder Luo lowered his voice and said, Don't worry. I've already handled the necessary secrecy using our school's capabilities, but I'm just itching with curiosity. A UR level awakener should reach the late chi controlling stage upon awakening, right? You clearly reached it only after quite some time. He just couldn't figure out this matter because whether it was his leisure system, or Yi Chongfeng's supremacy of 10,000 sword system, or Guo Zhenghong's counterattack system, all three were SR level, and yet Xiang Beifei merely learned a move or two taught by each of them and their systems started acting crazy. For the systems to make such a judgment, Xiang Beifei's system should at least be at the SSR or UR level, but he inexplicably did not reach the late chi controlling stage immediately. So I'm not, Xiang Beifei retorted. But you have already reached the meridian opening stage. That's because I've been practicing diligently, hardly ever slacking off, Xiang Beifei said earnestly. This seems to be true. Elder Luo found no excuse to refute, as he could see Xiang Beifei's diligence. Nearly every day, Xiang Beifei was by his side practicing, then asking questions, endowed with talent, serious about his training, and with a good temperament to boot. Elder Luo was delighted to see such a student. Thinking this way, Elder Luo suddenly chuckled with joy. Never mind, it doesn't matter. In the end, I will take you with me to fiercely slap those fellows in the face and teach them a lesson. He tossed a late-stage meridian opening beast pill to Xiang Beifei. Take it. Do whatever you need to do. Go for it. I've got your back if anything happens. If I get the chance to encounter any god-refining desolate beasts next time, I'll also slaughter 1 or 2 for you. Alrighty. Xiang Beifei accepted the beast pill, finding it good to follow the big shot Elder Luo. It was getting late, so they did not linger any longer, and Elder Luo brought Xiang Beifei back to the university. Back at the school, Xiang Beifei couldn't wait to run to his dormitory and rushed into the cultivation space there. He had obtained 5 beast pills today. 3 were early-stage meridian opening, 1 mid-stage, and 1 late-stage. He had killed the 3 early-stage desolate beasts himself. The mid-stage one was slain with Elder Luo's guidance, and he wasn't even a match for the late-stage beast. It was Elder Luo who killed it by spitting out a melon seed shell. Xiang Beifei eagerly let Xiaohe fuse the beast pills and quickly lit up the 5th star. Star ability. Stand aside. Ability description. Can use spiritual power to create a domain that prevents other unrelated persons or desolate beasts from interfering with what happens inside the domain. Effective only when there are at least 2 opponents. Cannot affect opponents who are an entire realm higher. This ability. Xiang Beifei pondered over the newly lit star. This ability seemed to be made for one-on-one fights, meaning that if he were to be ganged up on, he could forcibly drag one of the opponents into his domain to fight one-on-one first. The others could only stand aside and watch helplessly. This was a handy tool. If he encountered a group of desolate beasts in the wilderness, he wouldn't have to worry about a mob attack. Last time when Xiang Beifei was chased by a group of claw-tailed monkeys in the wilderness, he suffered a lot because he couldn't face a group of claw-tailed monkeys at once. If he had this ability then, he wouldn't have needed to run. He could just stand there and punch one little monkey to death while the others could only fret from the sidelines. Of course, if the opponent was a realm higher, then Xiang Beifei wouldn't be able to make them stand aside. This means he couldn't apply this ability to God-refining cultivators. But he could accept this drawback. After illuminating this star, Xiang Beifei didn't get too cocky, considering star abilities as only a complement to his cultivation, which was the most important thing. With that in mind, he started cracking melon seeds again, ready to seriously start broadening the 96,000 kilometers of his meridians. Meridian opening had to be done step by step. Currently, Xiang Beifei managed to open the meridians in both palms, which took him half a month, suggesting it might take quite a while. According to Xiang Beifei's estimation, to advance to the mid-meridian opening stage, he would need to open the full meridians in both arms and both legs, which at this pace might take another month or 2. Meaning that after reaching the meridian opening stage, the progress of one's cultivation would slow down. Of course, compared to others, his speed was already defying the heavens. After all, many SR-level individuals took a year just to barely enter the meridian opening stage, and some S-level individuals hadn't even reached it yet. Xiang Beifei devotedly studied spiritual power. His spiritual power had reached a certain level, and he was also working on his defensive power. Afterward, he thought that since he was in the meridian opening stage, and his spiritual power and defensive power had been almost fully cultivated, it was time to learn the stylish sword flight. So he went to find Yi Changfeng. Enjoy new tales from Empire. You little brat finally showed up. Yi Changfeng was beside himself with excitement. He had been eagerly waiting for so long for Xiang Beifei to take the initiative to learn sword flight. He took Xiang Beifei to the practice field created by a single sword, where the breeze on the cliff gently brushed by, and the distant mountains were shrouded in a layer of mist that appeared and disappeared. The place was like standing at the peak of mountains, with a broad and open artistic conception, where one could clear their mind and merge with the sword chi even faster. Sword flight is a technique that consumes a lot of spiritual power. First, you need to at least master the first 4 forms of the heavenly sword 9 traces, and this will take you some time. Is that so? Xiang Beifei grasped the Ronin sword, and with a swing, the sword chi surged through the air, making it tremble. He perfectly executed the first 4 forms. Yi Changfeng's face twitched. He had intended to say that mastering the first 4 forms of the heavenly sword 9 traces would take at least 7 days because it had taken him 2 weeks to learn, but he thought that with Xiang Beifei's extraordinary talent, it might only take a day. But his estimate was too conservative. Xiang Beifei learned too quickly. His speed of comprehending sword intent was astoundingly fast. Just by looking once. He couldn't possibly be more suited to my supremacy of 10,000 sword system than I am, could he? Yi Changfeng touched his forehead. Every time he thought about this, he felt extremely ashamed. Someone else was more suitable for his own system. How could he, a composed swordsman, stay calm? Sword flight is one of the more basic abilities in my swordsmanship. What is required is the understanding of the first 4 moves. Then, you need to integrate these moves, treat the sword as a part of yourself, and infuse spiritual power into the sword. When you feel that you are not physically controlling the sword, but using your mind to control it, the sword will be able to move with your heart, acting as your tool for flight. This process will be even harder than just mastering the moves. Cool. So this is sword flight. In the air, there was already a shadow flashing back and forth, performing various difficult aerial maneuvers around Yi Changfeng. Damn! Watching Xiang Beifei flying around him on the sword, even Yi Changfeng, who had always maintained a high level of composure and never sworn, couldn't help but utter this vulgar phrase that was completely out of character. That was just crossing the line. Is this even human? Is this really a human? Why on earth? I practiced for a whole year. Yi Changfeng almost spat blood. He sat on a stone chair by the cliff edge, holding a sword, angrily poking at the ground stones, almost turning them into powder. Xiang Beifei enjoyed the sensation of sword flight, which had quite the charm of a Xianxia hero. The only problem was flying too fast. His hair would get blown back, possibly turning into an explosive mess, and the strong wind was uncomfortable. Would he have to wear a motorcycle helmet for sword flight in the future to block the wind? Xiang Beifei rode the flying sword in the air for a loop, then stopped in front of Yi Changfeng. Squatting on the Ronin sword in midair, he pushed down his hair that had flipped up and asked with a puzzled look, "Mr. Yi, why does your hairstyle never get messed up each time you use sword flight?" He saw Mr. Yi use sword flight several times, but Yi Changfeng always maintained a detached and transcendental aura, with his robe fluttering and hair gently swaying, keeping a very handsome demeanor. Yi Changfeng, while calming himself down with a hand on his chest, then said, "Can't you use spiritual power to create a violent gust to block it? Isn't that very troublesome?" "Well, you have to choose between looking good and avoiding hassle," Yi Changfeng said irritably. "All right then," Xiang Beifei conceded, and after a while he asked again, "Last time I saw Mr. Yi fly, you departed by breaking through the air directly. Can I do that ahead of time? I have watched Mr. Ye's ability to break through the air several times, but I seem unable to grasp the essence of it." "You've mastered crap. If you had mastered it, would I still have the nerve to call myself a sword cultivator at the god-refining stage?" Yi Changfeng couldn't help but blurt out. After a long pause, he realized he had lost his composure, coughed, and regained his composure, saying, "Don't be impatient. Take it slow." He found that whenever he taught Xiang Beifei swordsmanship, he would always feel a sense of suffocation in his chest because of Xiang Beifei's retorts, and he couldn't maintain his usual profound and composed demeanor. No, for a swordsman, state of mind is the most important. If the mind is unsettled, the sword's momentum will be disrupted. And if the sword's momentum is disrupted, the person's sharpness will scatter. That's not cool. One must remain calm. Yi Changfeng reminded himself and took a deep breath. Xiang Beifei has now mastered sword flight, which should be faster than Lu Jiwei's motorcycle. When the time comes, if he can't beat the enemy in the wilds outside the domain, he can still run away, which isn't too bad. He looked at Yi Changfeng's system interface. Yi Changfeng's system had indeed issued related tasks, but for now, he had only mastered Yi Changfeng's swordsmanship and hadn't made any improvements to it, so he couldn't provide Yi Changfeng with much feedback. Improving swordsmanship is very troublesome, especially since Yi Changfeng's Heavenly Sword 9 Traces and Uncle Lu's Rapid Flame are not on the same level of cultivation technique. After all, Changfeng's technique is SR ranked, and SR level techniques are already high level and highly refined, requiring a significant amount of effort to improve. But he will try. Yi Changfeng said, "By the way, the selection for the 9 elite universities has been confirmed on our end. You need to meet the other 4 people, and then I will train you." "What will you train us in?" Yi Changfeng led Xiang Beifei out of the training space and back to the classroom, then continued, "For individual competitions, now that you are at the Meridian opening stage, we have confidence. We'll focus on the team from now on, especially team coordination. The other 4 are not familiar with the wilds outside the domain, and you have been there several times, so you will need to command them. You'll be the captain. That's what the training is about." Until now, Xiang Beifei had already toured the wilds outside the domain a few times, while the other freshmen hadn't at all. Their impression of the wilds outside the domain was merely from the simulation room, with no sense of crisis whatsoever. Xiang Beifei shrugged his shoulders, not knowing what to say. Anyway, whatever disagreement he expresses now, Yi Changfeng would simply ignore it. Does participating in this competition add extra points for the club? Xiang Beifei asked again. Yes. Each participant gets an extra 5,000 school credits. Depending on the results, you should get even more at that time. Yi Changfeng nodded slightly. Don't underestimate the experience of competing as a freshman. When looking for a good job after graduation, these experiences are very important, especially since many people in the alliance are watching. Xiang Beifei nodded thoughtfully. The other 4 will arrive soon, and you will train together. Get to know each other first. You have 10 days, and I will take you to familiarize yourselves with the wilds outside the domain, Yi Changfeng said. Okay. Xiang Beifei sat in the classroom, pondering over the heavenly sword 9 traces. About 10 minutes later, the first person walked in through the door. Xiang Beifei looked up and raised his eyebrows slightly. It was Long Guoqing. When Long Guoqing saw Xiang Beifei, he froze completely. Damn! I should have expected he would be here. Long Guoqing cursed silently in his heart. Every time he got too close to Xiang Beifei, he would feel very uncomfortable, because Xiang Beifei was like a mountain in front of him, making him want to climb but unable to conquer, which annoyed him intensely. I remember you two are roommates, so you already know each other. Long Guoqing is capable, and since you two understand each other well, the upcoming team cooperation should be very pleasant. Yi Changfeng was very satisfied with both of them. In his view, since Xiang Beifei and Long Guoqing were roommates and saw each other so often, they must get along well. What does a team need? Pleasant atmosphere, right? Enjoy new adventures from Empire. Happy my ass. Long Guoqing almost cursed out loud. From the start of school to now, other than the first meeting where he felt his face go red from being stared at, he hadn't had a single conversation with Xiang Beifei. They didn't even nod to each other in the dorm, having never spent any time alone. The psychological pressure Xiang Beifei put on Long Guoqing was so immense that, even though Xiang Beifei never bothered with him, Long Guoqing would choose to escape the dorm. It was only when Li Zimu and Meng Yuekai were around that Long Guoqing could relax a little. But Yi Changfeng didn't know any of this. He knew that Xiang Beifei was good-tempered, polite, and easy to get along with, thinking that 2 dorm mates couldn't possibly have a terrible relationship. I'll go back to the office to grab some things. I'll be back soon. You guys wait for the others? Yi Changfeng said as he stepped out and disappeared from the classroom. Once again, only Long Guoqing and Xiang Beifei were left in the classroom. Damn it! Long Guoqing's entire face turned green. In these few months, he had hardly ever been alone with Xiang Beifei, and today, unexpectedly, he was stuck with him again. He shouldn't have come so early. Xiang Beifei didn't bother with Long Guoqing and just looked at his cell phone. Long Guoqing didn't speak either, just arrogantly crossed his arms in front of his chest, staring at the blackboard. The air was filled with a quiet atmosphere. In the silence, there was a hint of awkwardness. Every second was torture for Long Guoqing. How come those idiots haven't arrived yet? Don't they know punctuality is a virtue? Long Guoqing was already cursing inside his head. No, I must stay calm. After all, I am in the advanced stage of qi controlling now, much stronger than when school started. This guy's just a body cultivation practitioner, so slow to improve, he's just in the intermediate stage. How can I be afraid of him? Exactly. I must be brave and face him. Now that I'm in the advanced stage of qi controlling and he's just in the intermediate stage, what do I have to fear? In the past few months, Long Guoqing had trained desperately, all to increase his cultivation level, so he could face this N-grade trash and beat him with his own hands. Maybe I should try staring him down again? Xiang Beifei rarely stayed in the dorm, and even when he did, he would go straight to cultivating, then to bed. Long Guoqing went back to the dorm while deliberately trying to avoid Xiang Beifei, never having a conversation. He didn't know if Xiang Beifei's strength had improved by now, but he knew his own had increased a great deal. Stare him down. This time, he was absolutely going to win. Determined, Long Guoqing slowly tilted his head, his gaze filled with an intense pressure, and quietly moved from the blackboard to Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei seemed to sense something and looked up, puzzled. Their eyes met. Damn it! Long Guoqing felt petrified by the casual glance from Xiang Beifei and quickly withdrew his gaze. He could feel his blood burning again. Am I blushing again? Still can't win in a staring contest? This was a miscalculation. What to do? Should I run? Long Guoqing felt extremely panicked. At that moment, Li Zimu, reading a book and eating a bun, walked in. He looked up at his two roommates and remarked, "Our dorm has 3 people. Not bad." He was also one of the 5 participating in the freshman contest. Li Zimu and Long Guoqing had just reached the advanced stage of qi controlling not long ago, but they were both very strong. Despite Li Zimu's genteel demeanor, he had won a reputation in the fighting arena these past 2 months, never having lost a fight. Li Zimu and Xiang Beifei were quite familiar with each other. Dorm mates and members of the same club, they got along well. "Li Zimu, you're late," Long Guoqing shouted, as if he'd found a lifeline, and moved to Li Zimu's side without drawing attention to himself. With Li Zimu between them, he could let Li Zimu block Xiang Beifei's daunting aura. Without Xiang Beifei's gaze on him, Long Guoqing felt much more at ease. "I went to buy some food and got held up for a bit. Wasn't our agreement to meet at 10? It's only 9:50 now," Li Zimu said while eating his bun. He then asked, "Do you guys want some? I bought a bag. All you know is to eat. Every time I see you, you're eating. You should have come with me." Long Guoqing found a flimsy excuse and shifted an inch further aside. "Reading consumes a lot of brain power, so I need to replenish energy. Why do you look so weird?" Li Zimu examined Long Guoqing and asked in puzzlement, "Why are you blushing again?" "I'm not. I didn't." "Stop talking nonsense." Long Guoqing snapped back. Li Zimu glanced at Xiang Beifei, who was still looking at his phone and seemed to figure something out, barely holding back a laugh. "Here, have a bun. Eating can relieve skin sensitivity," he joked. He stuffed a bun into Long Guoqing's mouth directly. "Stop messing around. Be mature. We're adults." Long Guoqing initially wanted to throw the bun away, but after a moment's hesitation, he viciously bit into it as if he harbored some deep grudge against it. "Xiang Beifei, do you want one? I bought a bag," Li Zimu said. He had a habit of eating various snacks while reading, but despite all that eating, he never seemed to put on weight. "Thanks," Xiang Beifei said, accepting the offer. Seeing Xiang Beifei take a bun, Long Guoqing immediately threw the one he had bitten into the trash without hesitation. "If he's eating buns, then I refuse to indulge." Long Guoqing snorted disdainfully and haughtily raised his head. "Wasting my buns," Li Zimu lamented. About 5 minutes later, a girl appeared at the door.